Pledge of Allegiance shall be led by Manar Haran, a student from Rosemont High School. Is Manar here?
Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and I believe that the school board member who represents your area has some words to say.
Hi. Hello.
Oh.
That's right.
The stellar student we celebrate today is Manar Haran. Manar is an incoming senior from Rosemont High School. We honor the tenacity of her student voice, her decorated scholastic career, and her personal accolades as she has collected over time. Manar epitomizes what it means to be a student leader. She is an active advocate for her student voice across the school district. Most recently, she spoke at the state capitol in front of Senator Lonnie Hancock and the State Assembly Education Committee, giving a compelling testimony before a captivated audience about the importance of SCUSD's summer programming. Manar proudly described in detail how SCUSD programs have cultivated and shaped her into a confident, driven, and ambitious young woman that she is today. The ambition has spilled over in many facets in Manar's life. She has held the ASB president position for all 4 years of her high school career, maintained a consistent high school scholastic honors, been a varsity basketball player since her sophomore year, and is currently the captain of the dance team. Manar also holds key positions in several clubs at Rosemont's campus, such as the California Scholarship Federation, the Black Student Union, and the Women's Dream Academy. In addition, she is currently the youth coordinator for the 2014 Summer at City Hall program. Manar is finding time to give back to other students. She is currently on the facilitation team for the SYLP Sac State Summer Camp, mentoring incoming high school freshmen across the district, instilling within them and the same confidence that the SCUSD has given her. After high school, Manar plans to keep her career choices open, hoping to attend either UC Davis, Cal State East Bay, or Howard University. The Board of Education is proud to recognize Manar Haran as our stellar student. You want to say something?
I just would like to thank you guys so much for presenting me this award. Thank you.
Really, 4 years as ASB president?
I was actually class president for 3 years, and then this year I was elected ASB president.
That's very impressive. Very good. Thank you for your leadership.
Yeah.
Okay, 5.0, announcements of action taken in closed session. Dr. Noguchi.
Yes, we have one. By a unanimous vote of the board, we have our next principal at Sac City Unified. It's my pleasure and honor to welcome Ms. Samantha Holmes as our next principal at John Cabrillo Elementary. Can you stand? Just a few words. She has worked as a teacher for 12 years, both at Parkway and John Cabrillo. And in her last 10 years, she's been a lead teacher. We welcome her expertise in the area of curriculum instruction and Common Core. We look forward to her leadership with our parents, our teachers, and our staff. Welcome.
Welcome. Congratulations. And another announcement. I am pleased to announce that the board, by a vote of 6-1, with board member Hanson voting no, approved the appointment of Jose Banda as the Sacramento City Unified School District's new permanent superintendent. I would this time like to give an opportunity to have three of the board members who took the time, and I appreciate them. First of all, let me put forward my appreciation that they took the time to visit Mr. Bonda's current school district, and like to have them have an opportunity to speak to the appointment. And I will start with Vice President Wu.
Thank you, President Kennedy. I want to share just one thought that I came away from Seattle with, and that thought is that Superintendent Bonda has said consistently that he moves slow to move fast. And the message that I left Seattle with is that he has left them with a 5-year strategic plan, which they feel confident will carry forward their school district for the remainder of that strategic plan. They feel very comfortable, notwithstanding the fact that they're very sad to lose him.
Member Arroyo?
Thank you, President Kennedy. I think that one of the big takeaways of being able to meet with the a day-long back-to-back meetings of stakeholders in the Seattle Public School District was a continuous thread or common theme that was echoed by all stakeholders, and was Mr. Bonda's ability to bring stability to the district and develop a collaborative team that allowed the district to move forward. And I think that what was also echoed was the district's ability to continue on. One of the main questions that I asked was how they felt about him leaving, and if they were in a better place, and if they were in a solid position to move forward. And every single group basically echoed the fact that he had built capacity. He had built a team that worked together, and they feel that can continue to work together. And I think that that echoes very much also what we need here in Sacramento, which is the opportunity to build a strong team and continue to strengthen the district and be able to move forward. And so I think it was a very positive experience. It was a reassurance of the talent that Mr. Bonda brings to this district, and we'd like to thank the rest of the board and President Kennedy for having opened the door and facilitate the process of actually making this trip happen, which was very, very productive. Thank you.
Thank you. And Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Kennedy. So I just would like to report out on a few other things that we heard during and I was there for a day and a half, and I actually toured the Seattle Public Schools area, as well as participated in the interviews. So one of the things that was key and that I'd like to make clear to everyone is that Mr. Jose Banda is focused on equity for each and every child. He was focused on building relationships that were important. He went out into diverse communities and met with parents, and he built trust across the diversity of parents in the district. He was thoughtful, reflective, listens well, and is calm. And lastly, I think the most important thing that we can expect in the superintendent is that he always asks what the needs of the district are and what the district can do to meet those needs. So I feel comfortable with Mr. Jose Banda and coming into our district, and I look forward to working with him as part of a team with our board and with the community, with our parents and teachers and faculty of the district. And a staff with the district. So thank you very much, everyone, for providing this opportunity. And a special thank you to our board president, Mr. Patrick Kennedy, for having a lot of patience through this process and allowing for the board to do what was necessary in order to come to a very thoughtful decision. We couldn't have done that without you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you probably could have. But I do want to thank, though, in particular, a couple of members of the staff who have been tremendously helpful throughout the process. It has been very difficult. It's very laborious and a lot of work to do. And Mr. Gabe Ross, thank you very much for your guidance and leadership. Kua Franz has been, invaluable in throughout the entire process. So I really appreciate. And if Mr. Forrest was here, I would extend the same to him. So thank you very much to staff for all of your support. And of course, we'll have more to say on it later, but I also want to thank Dr. Noguchi for her just steadfast support throughout the process, her professionalism, and her friendship. But we'll have more to say about that at a future date. So, thank you very much. No more announcements to be taken out of closed session. We have an agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as it stands? So moved. Moved by Vice President Wu, seconded by Vice President Pritchett. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Public comments. 7.0 public comment. I believe we have 2 public comments.
We actually have 3 public comments, Mr. President. The comments are from Vincent Tataro, Mac Worthy, and Karen Hart.
Vincent, you're up.
Good evening. I don't have any children in Sacramento City Unified, but I went to school here. And the reason I'm here tonight is an article that appeared in the Bee pertaining to travel spending. And that really sort of ticked me off. I sent President Kennedy a email. I have a copy for the rest of you if you'd like that. And the article was positive and negative. The negative part is I don't feel the board has been paying attention to how we spend our money, which is one of your duties as the board. I do know that you have restricted and non-restricted spending for travel. And I don't feel that the money's been spent properly. $755,000 is a lot of money to spend on travel in 1 year. My wife is from Ireland, and we travel to Ireland on a regular basis. And I could probably live in Ireland for 20 years on that kind of money and buy a house. Why are we spending that kind of money in Sacramento? How is that helping our students learn? I don't think it is. That money should be spent either maintenance or in the classroom. And I think there's probably more creative ways of doing this. One would be, it seems like all the school districts act as Greek city-states. Athens does what they're going to do. Sparta does what they're going to do. Nobody coordinates between school districts. Why can't we do some of the seminars here in Sacramento between all the school districts? I think there would be a cost savings.
I need you to wrap it up.
Pardon?
I need you to wrap it up. Your time is.
Oh, okay. Good.
I've let you go over because your wife's from Ireland.
Oh, okay. That's good. That's fair enough. I would like to see some change. I have some recommendations.
If you could hand those out, because you're.
Oh, okay. That's
way
fine.
over
There's
time.
other people. One of the other things I'll just say is that I know there's different committees, and I checked online. There's a financial committee, but there's no money in it. Who from the board is paying attention to the finances of the district? There's no committee.
Vince, let's talk offline. I did finally get that email and
Oh,
sent,
okay,
and sent
that's
you
fine.
and
That's fine.
you and I will talk offline.
Who shall I hand this to?
Mr. Ross will take
Okay.
it, and we'll make sure that the whole board gets it, and then you and I will meet offline. And
Oh, yeah, that'd be fine.
I'd love
Because I
to.
would like to see some change
Okay.
and some improvement. I'm just not here to complain.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I would like to see something done in the next 60 days in terms of organizing a plan of action to save money for the district.
Thank you, sir.
Okay? Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Mac Worthy. Good afternoon. I'm still on the how this board operates. I've been here since 1963, and I still see you're using this board as a springboard to go somewhere else. And that tells me you don't have kids in your mind. You have your career in your mind. And that have hurt this district. And it still hurt this district. We saw Kenny run his campaign off a charter school. That was Asians and Hispanics. You got a chance to get that, but I'll be over there. I got people like, we Republicans and libertarians are going to fight this thing to the bones, to go back to public education. We saw a charter school approved here was critical. But what's in that said, we will make our decisions from our sight. Nobody said a word. Be careful, people. I don't have the money to file the injunction. I don't have the people to file the injunction on it. Now is the time to file injunctions against it because we know how we got Sac High. We in Oak Park still don't have a regular high school due to the circumstances of how you deal with the superintendent. I was looking to see the real superintendent here tonight. Thanks for sitting in. And when you see things on a consent calendar to ratify his salary, and we ain't seen the man, it's something wrong. We knew it was going to be a Hispanic. We knew that. That's the reason I oppose black mayors and black presidents. We don't have to design history. America will have its history in its own, and we're going to come to that. Now, all the years we went through, a black person on the boat. We don't have one to do it. Where did the others go? This is what we're saying. Nobody. I got grandkids. My daughter's gone. I got grandkids here. I'm still here. We don't see one black school teacher come in here and say a word. They know the system.
Please wrap it up, Mr. Withers.
Yeah. When we look at what you approved of the janitors, I'm an expert, 44 years. Nobody said Mike Worthy talked to us. They knew I had the contract to clean Father Keith B. Kennedy up. That was by unions, people, when that should have been the public neighborhood take care of that, and you wouldn't have to have.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to be true. The other guy spent some time here.
And you have to.
We would have people in the neighborhood would be there 24/7. You wouldn't pay $65,000 for an alarm system. We would have bodies on that school ground. Wouldn't be no retirement plan.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to have to ask you to.
And we got to wake up to that. People.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Gladney. Right? Nope. What do we got next?
It's Karen Hart.
Oh, sorry. Why did I think that? Oh, I got a card for you later. That's right. Okay.
Mr. President and other distinguished members of the board, some of you I've had an opportunity to meet this past Wednesday. My name is Dr. Karen Hart. I am a physician in primary care and private practice in Sacramento, and I am here to request an opportunity to engage the board in considering developing a Visions 2000 program for GATE students in the Sacramento City Unified School District. So I am here to take that opportunity to make a formal request to be calendared, to have that particular issue calendared at one of the future board meetings.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's all the public comment. And now I have a statement to be read that should have been read at the beginning of the meeting, but I'm still learning on the job. What?
Can I ask that somebody, one of our staff, go and connect with Ms. Hart so that way we don't lose contact with
Superintendent?
with her request?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Hart, I'd just offer myself up to, and I'd be happy to meet with you. I haven't had a chance to meet with you yet, so if my email address is on the website, or if you want to come grab a card, I'd be happy to do that. I'd be happy to talk to you about that program as well.
That concludes public comment, and this meeting of the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the Government Affairs channel on Comcast and SureWest Cable Systems. Today's meeting will air on Sunday, July 20th at 9 a.m., Monday, July 21st at noon, and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv or sacmetrocable.tv. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker identification form located in the back of the room and give it to the Chief Communications Officer, Mr. Ross, prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Responses to questions by the public will be posted on the district website prior to the next board meeting. Please turn all cell phones off or place them on silent or vibrate. Thank you. Consent calendar 9.0. We have two comments to be made on two. Before I pull them, though, I'd just like to hear the comments, and then the board can determine whether or not we want to pull them or keep them on the consent agenda. And then I have a comment to be made on the consent item. So if I can first, if I can call Mr. Gladney up to address items 9.1A and 9.1B.
I'm sorry, President Kennedy, we actually have a third comment on consent item. We have a comment from Mr. McWorthy on 9.1D as well.
D as in David?
Correct.
Thank you.
Good evening, Terrence Gladney.
You'll actually have 4 minutes if you need them, but please don't take them.
We'll see.
Okay.
We'll cut it somewhere in the middle. On 9.1A, I want to specifically talk about one of the contracts that was awarded to AMS.net to provide Cisco support services. I'm sure you guys all are, if not most of you are aware that I served on the Technology Advisory Committee. One of the things that struck out or stood out to me around that whole process was, I believe now outgoing Associate Superintendent of Educational IT, Terry Kritzepis, when he came to the district, not too late after that, we assumed a new contract with AMS.net. If you guys look at the contracts page, they're based in Livermore, California, and they previously did work with Terry Kritzepis when he was in the Milpitas School District. One of the things that I asked of you guys and also of the committee was why we were engaging a partner. You know, Cisco is a pretty big enterprise company, and they have a number of certified partners, and many of them are here in our local community. And I was wondering why we're spending money for a company based outside of our locale to provide services, not only that enterprises here in our local area could provide, but also a number of students. Back when I was pretty early in my IT career, I took classes through the Cisco Networking Academy at Sacramento City Sac City College. And it's something that, you know, through the community college system, many, not only high school students as well, are taking some of those classes. And one of the things I proposed to the committee at the time was, how about we explore a partnership between our local school district, Sac City, and Sac City College to bridge those kids from high school and give them a real career pathway. It's a STEM career, and with our district now fully engulfed in Cisco networking products, I think it's an opportunity for us to restore some economic wherewithal to our students here and really give them a bridge out of our school. So I'm willing to help, the exploratory discussions. I know the administrator and the main educator over at Sac City who provides those classes. But one of the things you guys see in that contract is it's a $40,000 flat rate for labor services, and there's numbers, I believe $125 for a level 1 engineer for travel and $250 for a higher level engineer to travel. And if they're based in Livermore, then maybe that's why the other gentleman was talking about $755,000 in travel. Or maybe it's just one example. 9.1B. 9.1B, I just want to take the opportunity to publicly thank Judy Wong. I did notice when I was reading through the packet that she's retiring. She was a longtime teacher at Caroline Winslow and was actually my son's kindergarten teacher. And, you know, when I look at my son now, he'll be a junior this coming year at Kennedy. A lot of his peers that he was in kindergarten with, and see what they are, not only as students, but also as men, young men and women. But then also their siblings who have had them, you know, when she now taught like second grade or other grades at Winslow. I know that she had a positive impact on their lives. A pretty specific example is I remember when my son was in kindergarten, him being a boy, you know, his developmental stages are going to be different than a girl. So most of the girls were pretty much ready to do their sight words. And Terrence, he did his sight words, but he didn't necessarily give the output to show that he understood them. And Ms. Wong was like, you need to read, Terrence. You need to do your sight words. You need to do your sight words. And he wouldn't read, you know, all through kindergarten. And as you guys well know, like after his kindergarten year, we moved to Arizona. And within 2 weeks of first grade, he started reading. And I know that, you know, I mean, he had a great first grade teacher, but I know that she didn't allow him to start reading in 2 weeks. I know that it was the foundation that Ms. Wong gave him that allowed him to do it in his own time when he was ready. So I want to thank Ms. Wong and all of the other teachers that have provided such a solid foundation for so many of our students. And hopefully we can find somebody like her to come up through the ranks and do the same for students in the future. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Mr. Worthy? 9.1D.
I'm concerned because I got some phone calls.
Sorry, Mr. Worthy, if you could pause for just one moment. We want to get the clock going here. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
I got some phone calls on the superintendent. I say, see here tonight to ratify his salary. I think his salary is not public information, as it were a few years ago. But what we see here, and they say it's 2 years. Why would he tell you he only going to be here 2 years? I get these phone calls. Now, something is going on here very seriously. Now, 2 years is my speech. Is what we're going on, and that's about Barack Obama leaving Washington, D.C. I've been talking that same thing, and then I get this. But what hit me, the consulting firm is two of the nicest people that I have met for a long time, other than Hanson here in the district.
He's a nice
Why would somebody call me and tell me they got a $32 million war chest? I'm the wrong man to tell that because I want money. Where is that money lying if it's $32 million? Is it in bonds? Is it in cash money? What bank is it in? What type of interest does it from? Somebody ain't telling the truth here in accounting. Accounting was my major. I was in the business for 44 years. I faced IRS for many, many years. So tell the people the truth here. If you got money here, we said one school was left over with some money. Is this superintendent going to be able to cover that? Is he agreeing to that? Something's very seriously wrong here. This man going to come in here and the blueprint already been down and he got to put his stamp on it? I would encourage him the same thing I done the previous one. Don't lose your health behind the school district because it's garbage until we get it in receivership of the state and federal government.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy, and welcome back. On 9.1D, I also want to just address quickly before we move forward, just for a brief explanation of the process that took place and why the contract is now available and it wasn't necessarily available to the public prior. A lot of it is due to the conformity with the Brown Act. The full board did not negotiate the contract because of the Brown Act. We were not able to do so. And to talk about specifics of the contract has to happen in open session of the full board. There was a contract committee and a negotiating committee to negotiate that contract with the new superintendent. It was made up of Member Rodriguez, Vice President Pritchett, and myself. We negotiated first among ourselves, and then we negotiated with Mr. Banda, and the contract that is now available to the public is the result of those negotiations. The board then reviewed the contract as in closed session, again in conformance with the Brown Act, and it is now an open session item, and that's why it is on the agenda right now. That being said, is there a motion on the consent agenda? It's moved by Vice President Wu and seconded by Vice President Pritchett. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. 10.0 Board Workshops, Strategic Plan and Other Initiatives. 10.1 Facility Reuse and Repurpose Criteria Update. Ms. Allen.
Good evening, Board President Kennedy, Interim Superintendent Noguchi, and Board. Kathy and Alan and I returned this evening to bring you some updated information on the criteria and fee structure for facilities for repurpose and reuse.
You can go anytime now.
I'll just go ahead. As background, the board-appointed 7-Eleven committee met for 6 months and resulted in a recommendation to not surplus any of the 7 sites that were reviewed. Staff then developed a process to lease sites and presented that proposal on June 19th. At that time, you requested additional options for fees, possibly using civic center categories. Over the last month, tours were advertised at all 7 sites. Multiple groups attended for some sites. While there was no interest in further touring at CB Wire, we did have, for example, 3 groups that toured Washington. This slide gives an overview of the criteria you saw on June 19th. Again, it is not our intent to use this criteria to rank proposals, but to gather information and include in a report to the board. Kathy will now walk you through the proposed fee structures and categories.
So the board had requested a little more information regarding what we charge around our civic permit categories. So what you see in front of you is a really brief summary of a very long document. So we have 4 classifications that we use when we are leasing out space through our civic center permit process. Class A is what we call completely subsidized by the district. They're district-sponsored nonprofit organizations, clubs, associations, or other groups whose primary focus is the promotion of youth and school activities. So these are typically, associated student bodies, parent-teacher associations, PTOs and PTSOs, staff unions, groups, and those types of uses. Class B is what we call our discounted rate. Typically, these are nonprofit organizations that reside within the district whose primary focus is the promotion of youth groups that have a residency requirement, some local senior citizen groups, some homeowners associations, and then the net receipts of admission fees and membership fees, et cetera, have to be expended for the welfare of the pupils in the district. Class C is what we call our direct costs, activities of nonprofit organizations whose primary focus is serving the general public, including civic and service groups like Kiwanis and Rotary, Moose, Lions, et cetera, chambers of commerce, youth organizations without a residency requirement, and some other nonprofit supplemental educational service providers, and religious services also fall under this category. And then Class D is our private and commercial. This really is everybody else. So I just wanted very briefly to share with the board a new Senate bill that was adopted in 2012 or passed in 2012 that amended the Ed Code section that describes how we are able to calculate fees for civic center permit uses. The big change in here is that it actually allows districts to recover costs for the maintenance and repair, restoration, and refurbishment. It is something that we haven't brought to the board yet. We'll have to take a look at the calculations. I mean, it's kind of an onerous process to go through debt service payments and how much it really does cost to operate one of our school sites, and ultimately would result in an increase in the fees that we currently charge all of those groups A, B, C, and D. So we'll be taking a further look at that and maybe bringing just a report back to the board at that time. One of the things I did want to point out is that the Civic Center fees are really based primarily on a per-use rate and not something that is going to be a year-long time. So it might be every 4th Wednesday of the month. There might be a group that meets versus some of the folks that you'll hear from tonight who want to rent entire sites or portions of entire sites. So using the fees that we charge for Civic Center permits would result in really outrageous fees if we were to apply them across the board for our long-term leases. But you had asked for it, so I thought I would bring it back for your review. So the fee structure, this really didn't change very much. We're sticking with the base rate of $1.88 per square foot per year, which is the rate that we charge our charters. And again, we're assuming that our tenants would cover the cost of all utilities over and above what was calculated for the 2013-14 base year. And we still have our options on custodial fees. We can go over that a little bit as well. So what's different on this slide here, you'll see highlighted in blue, is when we went back and looked at our Civic Center fees and how we go from category to category to category, we thought we would find a nice progression of 10% more, 10% more. Well, we found our numbers were really all over the board. So we went from Class A to Class B, and it was a 249% increase. Class B to Class C was like a 49% increase. And so obviously that would make it a little bit difficult to calculate this and put the rates out of anybody's reach. And so we took a stab and just said, let's again start with a $1.88 base rate, and then option B, which is the direct cost rate, we added 5%, and then option C would be our fair market value rate at $2.07 a foot. So again, per year. The utility costs are the same. The custodial, again, we bring forth 3 options. Option A would be our own staff, which we would prefer because we would like our own eyes and ears watching our sites for us. You see the rate there. Option B is what we're calling a market custodian rate, a commercial rate of 10 cents per square foot per month, and then a minimum wage rate there. So now the total projected yearly lease, depending on if a group falls in an A, B, or C category, could be anywhere between $65,700 on up to $104,000, depending on, again, the square footage of the site that they would be interested in. So we brought this to you a little bit before. I think you're going to chat about, yeah, other districts.
So you saw this slide a month ago when we were here. These were the districts that we reached out to find information about what success they had in leasing out their closed sites. And we found that they didn't really have very much success. What they're typically using their closed sites for are either additional district programs like independent study or departments that have moved into sites, or they're using them for schools, either interim schools as they're doing repairs on schools that need to be repaired, or for charter schools. And in wrapping up tonight, once we receive your input on fee structure and criteria tonight, we'll receive and evaluate proposals, and then we'll provide options to the board to review. And we're available to answer any questions or receive comments.
Member Cuneo. I'm sorry, we have public comment.
We have one public comment on this item from Judy Smith.
Thank you, President Kennedy, board members. Appreciate your time. I would just like to first thank Jim Dobbins, who showed up on about a 110-degree day and opened up Fruit Ridge. We had a really good showing. Some of the people that had already seen the school didn't come, but we had an excellent showing of the other groups. I just would also like to thank you ahead of time for seriously considering what we are proposing to do at Fruit Ridge. We've got some really great groups from Legal Services Northern California, Center for Fathers and Families, Play Hard, Play Smart, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, who want to move all of their organization over there, the PTA Clothes Closet, who hopefully we can get into 2 schools, Phoenix Drum and Dance, Black Parallel School Board, Hugo Chacon, Organic Gardens, Selly Inc., and also we would love to have the district presence, maybe through independent study or home study, and I know that the preschool is going to be starting again. So anyway, I would just like to thank you all ahead of time for really considering this. I've had calls from really honestly all over the United States because I got on the phone and started calling, and people have been reaching out to me from San Francisco at Healthy Dignity Health. I've had CEO Scott Syfax, Nehemiah, wanting to find out more about what we're doing. And I think there's a real interest, and I know by these organizations that are really passionate that we can really make an impact on the youth, the seniors, the adults in an area that is really underserved. And I beat you. I did it. Okay, thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. We appreciate it. Now, Mr. Cuneo. Is it? Look at that. It is. I'm lousy at this. You guys should get rid of me.
I just have a clarifying question in regards to the fee structures, and how is this going to affect like our other sites, and how is there any change on how we're going to charge like our PTA groups or sports groups that are renting out our schools currently?
So the PTA and the sports groups fall under that Civic Center Act. So it wouldn't. They're not related, really.
It's not no change from
No
what
change to them, no.
in the sports group, same thing.
Correct.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Vice President Wu.
Thank you, President Kennedy. Just as a check to make sure that we're on the in the right ballpark, I want to ask the staff look at the $1.88 that we charge for at the discounted rate and make sure that that doesn't exceed the fair market value for the area that the school is in, because I think that fair market value may vary from location to location wherever you are in the city, and some areas are not as valuable as other areas in terms of what a fair market commercial rate might be. So I want to make sure that we're equitable with what we charge as well.
Okay.
Member Rodriguez.
Thank you. So am I assuming correctly that before we even get to the accepting proposals part, that we're going to get a full list of criteria that the board is going to approve so that it allows you to evaluate these proposals?
So the criteria that we've shared with you so far is, I think back on slide 3, there was very little comment about the criteria at the June 19th board meeting, so we didn't add anything to this. A comment that I would have is if we do go to a tiered rate structure, then that would be added to this criteria in terms of when we evaluate these proposals from these groups, we would say, are you a group A, are you a group B, are you a group C? So if the board has additional criteria that they would like to add to our list, then we'll put that all together when we send out the information to the folks who are interested in leasing the sites. But right now, this is what we're starting with.
I didn't provide additional information at the June 19th meeting because I thought I did.
Well, we compared our notes and didn't see anything that added to the criteria. If we missed it, I apologize, but we can certainly get it on there now. But we did compare.
Unfortunately, I don't have my notes with
Well,
me.
it may have been because you did provide quite a bit. Maybe it's just not under criteria. Is there someplace else that you would have included Member Rodriguez's comments? Because she did speak for a while.
What we can do is take a look back in the notes. The notes haven't been processed because we're a little backlogged at this point with 2 board meetings, so we can take a look at the notes. I do remember you gave quite a bit of information around the fee structure, so but we'll go back and take a look at the notes, see if there's anything added. Do you see anything here that you can that you're remembering? If not, we'll take a look and then we'll let the board know.
I just would appreciate the subsequent meetings, that maybe even a review of my comments. I mean, they're available on the district website, that you do a review of them, because then now to have me recall what I stated, it was quite significant. And I'm just sorry to say this, but I'm a little concerned that it didn't get put into this at this point.
Yeah, I do remember that there was quite a bit of discussion around the benefit to the community and the kinds of benefits to the different kinds of communities. We do have that in our notes. We can look back.
Thank you. I'd like to see it come back and with a review of the comments that I made, especially around fee structure. I do like that you went back and reviewed it. And I do like that you on page, oh, there's no page on this one. Let's see. Page 7. I like the way that you lay it out, and I agree with Member Wu about the fair market rate. And the other thing is, you know, I mean, if we're considering proposals from people who are for-profit business, we really should have a tiered look at this, because for-profit is in the business for-profit, and we shouldn't be giving our district sites away at a discount if that's the case. We should be able to. We should be in a position of helping other nonprofits, but not for-profits. That's my last comment on that, and I look forward to this coming back with a review of the other comments that I had made prior to this, and I welcome a phone call if you'd like to discuss it after you read, and I'll go back and review my comments as well.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Member Arroyo.
Thank you, President Kennedy. On page 4, you have the proposed fee categories. And I think that that's a good starting point. Is there or will be there a more specific breakdown to identify, because there will be many organizations that overlap, or just to give us more clarity to figure out what organizations fit where?
That is going to be a challenge for us.
I know. And
it is.
And so in anticipating what could be a bigger challenge because there's less clarity.
Right.
That's...
Well, these four categories, again, it's B, C, and D that we would be mostly concerned with. As Judy Smith mentioned, there's 5, 10, 12 groups that are interested in coming together to form or offer services to the area youth and community. Whether one or two of those might fall into a Class C and the rest fall into a Class B, we'll have to figure out how to work through that. We haven't received those proposals yet, so we're not quite sure how that's going to look. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, I think, to just nicely package everything together in a Class B or a Class C.
Exactly. So any work that we can do in advance to clarify would make your job as staff in being neutral in deciding, right? Rather than being a little bit more case by case, arbitrary, like, maybe today I felt this way, and if I looked at it tomorrow, I may have a different perspective. So going back to the question that Board Member Rodriguez was alluding to, as far as being a little bit more specific on identifying the community benefits. For example, I know for a fact one of the groups interested has to do with health services, right? Where does that rank in our priorities for benefits of the community? I would think that if they are enriching the health of the organization or the community, they're helping students, they're helping families, and they have a pretty beneficial impact in the community. Any time that we have an opportunity to be a little bit more clear where the service is more than the organization. You alluded to the fact that there may be a conglomerate of organizations, but I think ultimately is the services that get provided versus the applicants. And if we, the board, with your support in identifying those buckets, if you will, we can come up with a system, I guess, that eliminates confusion or multiple options, because I think that you might want to avoid being in a position where you have to guess and then not know if they fit in one category or the other.
Yeah, and again, as Mary said earlier, we aren't going to rank them. We're just going to receive all of them, go through the criteria that we do have, establish whether they have the financial wherewithal to do what can they pay for the square footage that they're using, make sure that they're comfortable with what the true costs are and what it really does mean to rent a school site, and then we would package that up and then bring it back to the board for your review. So at that point, then after that board, we might have a scoring rubric of some kind, but we're not going to come to you at the next board meeting and say we choose this group, this group, this group. We're going to package them together, try and figure out if they most likely fall under a B or a C, and then just bring that to the board for you guys to take a look at.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Cunha.
Good job, Mr. President. I just wanted to make explicit, so every, request is going to be brought to the board regardless of staff's opinions of that request?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Comments, questions? I'll just make a real brief comment. I agree with my colleagues. I do like the direction this is going. I do like the fact that we are treating organizations differently. That nonprofits and organizations that serve the community shouldn't be viewed upon as the same way as just any other for-profit or any other organization. So I like that a lot. I do like that we're looking at giving the ability to particularly those that are community-based organizations that are helping the community, working with the community, and serving our students and their families, opportunities to be able to keep their costs low and looking at options with custodial staff. I think that is, I do appreciate that. You heard loud and clear a lot of those things. So good work. All right. Anything else?
Not on that one.
Okay. Thank you very much. 10.2, Real Property Surplus Workshop. This is a workshop on the process of surplus property. It is not a workshop to discuss any proposals or that have come forward. It's just to give the board an opportunity to identify what options will be coming forward in the future, what that looks like, and provide direction to staff. Is that accurate, Ms. Allen?
Pretty good, yeah.
Okay, thank you. 10.2, go ahead.
Thank you. All right, I've asked Tom to come up and join me because I think you're going to have some questions of the legal nature that I will take a stab at and probably mess up. So Tom is going to assist me during this. Okay, so a little bit of background. So what we're really hoping to discuss today includes identifying what happens when the district does have vacant property. Obviously, we start with the 7-11 process, which ultimately results in a recommendation to the board. And typically those, the recommendation is either surplus or not surplus. If a property is declared surplus, then there's quite an extensive Ed Code section that we are required to follow that has a very prescribed procedure, which we're going to cover that in a little bit more detail later. We did look at if we had any existing practices and processes, as well as what the policies are as identified by CSBA. We've never really gone down this road before, so with the exception of one joint use arrangement that we had with the City of Sacramento, so we really don't have existing practices, and we looked at CSBA policies, and they almost mirror identically what's in Ed Code and Government Code. So nothing really new came of that. Some of the areas that we feel that we should address when we are discussing possible surplus property would be programmatic in nature. Obviously, we would want to evaluate whether there are any fiscal impacts to the district, and then if there are any other goals or priorities that may be attached or identified to a particular site. So the items we believe the board would like to discuss tonight, certainly add more if we need to, would be including and identifying a process by which we do bring the proposals to the board. There's a substantial confidentiality component to this process at some point in time, as it may end up a negotiated sale. We kind of need to keep those confidential until a point where they are required to be public. One of the big things that we've talked about before is what is the trigger to notifying the board? Be another thing that we'd like some input on. And then, of course, we would want to evaluate what the district needs are. Are there community interests involved that we should maybe partner with or take priority over something else? And then if there's any private interest or joint ventures that would be applicable for a closed site. So this is just a brief heading for this, which is a bit longer. I think you have this in a bigger format in your packet. So this is a kind of a flow chart, not really a flow chart. This is, because one doesn't take priority. See, I'm messing this up already. So if we go through the 7-11 process, the board could declare a property surplus. There's really two avenues to go. And the side on the left are what we're calling the major exceptions to the process. One of them is a historic building process, which is really, really convoluted, and I don't think it's ever actually been done before that I've ever heard about. It also requires the vote of the County Board of Supervisors. So we haven't been approached by anybody on that yet that I'm aware of. The next one down is, and these are not in order of importance, these are just listed. The land exchange, which you have heard a little bit about. Pretty simple, 2 paragraphs in Ed Code, 2/3 votes. I mean, it's a pretty simple process to go through. And then there's this other kind of oddball thing with the State Board of Ed waiver from a competitive sale. Again, I've never heard of any district going through this, but it's also fairly convoluted. So the board moving forward on any site that is declared surplus could exercise any one of those 3 exceptions to dispose of property or trade property. On the right-hand side, we have the process that is very, very prescribed by law and in Ed Code. It has a little bit of a government code component to it. And I think at this point I'm going to turn it over to Tom.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Good evening, board members. Tom Gauthier, legal counsel. Ms. Allen just described the discretionary exceptions that are on the left-hand side of the chart. The process, if one of those exceptions is not used, the process then goes to the required offers of sale that are on the right-hand side of the chart. And they're not listed in order of importance or order that they typically go in. But there are some requirements both under the education code and the government code. There are many forks in the road, but typically offers to charter schools that have at least 80 in-district ADA are given if they have a written request out there. And then second, you need to analyze each site to see if there was a prior playground use under the Naylor Act. If there was a prior playground use, then offers need to be made to local park and recreation government agencies. And again, all of these points that I'm discussing along the way involve an offer of sale and then or a sale or a lease with option to purchase. And then if terms are met with any one of these parties, then you enter into negotiations. I should say if there's a bona fide offer and an acceptance and then terms are reached, then a sale or a lease can happen. If it doesn't happen at any one of these points, you move to the next group. So backing up again, charter schools, Naylor Act, and then various groups, various types of local governments get offers as well. The first group is some local governments, and then the second group is under the government code. There's some local governments with housing, public housing agencies, and also offers to the UC Regents and other state agencies as well. So once all those required offers have been made, if there are no transactions at the end of that, then the next step is to consider a declaration for competitive sale. And as you can see on the chart, that requires a 2/3 vote, and then advertising for bids and acceptance of bids in that case. And like I said, there's many forks in the road along this process. I'm happy to drill down on any of the parts of the process that are of interest to board members. And Ms. Allen, is there anything else that you'd like me to hit right at the moment?
Well, the next couple of slides contain a lot of information, but it basically in more detail spells out what Tom just would explain to you in terms of what is required if we go with an offer of sale. So this is right out of Ed Code. This is the section of the government code that Tom mentioned takes a couple of forks in the road. This is one of the forks that the board may choose to go down. I think that's what gets a little bit confusing is there are a lot of opportunities here for the board to go in many different directions, and each one of those directions requires a certain notification process, a length of time, and ultimately, if we don't get any takers on that right-hand side of the chart as we go down, then we would put the property out for competitive sale. This is the same slide I brought last week and also June, last month. When we surveyed districts about what they're doing on their closed sites for leasing, we actually asked them to what's happening on your surplus sites. So, does anybody have any luck with that? More and more districts now are actually selling properties. There's been some loosening up of the regulations at the state level in terms of the State Allocation Board, and which is the entity that we receive funding from. And so before the reg change and the ledge change, monies that were made from the sale of a property had to go into specific accounts. So now it's a little bit loosened up, and districts have more options about where they want to put the money. So you'll see school districts actually trying to sell properties a little bit more often. So Orange Unified is a good example. They had a couple of properties they put on the market. One of them they put on for about $2 million. They got a bid of about 4.2. Again, competitive sale. So they went through all of those other pieces first, and then there were no takers from all the entities that were discussed, and they ended up selling the property. So it's still a relatively new kind of thing. We've been such a growing state for so many years that this, declining enrollment in school districts and having vacant surplus properties, a relatively new thing. And really, we're just all trying to kind of feel our way through it and understand the code sections. With that, since this is a workshop, I think we'll turn it over to you guys and just do our best to answer questions.
We're first going to turn it over to the public.
We have just one comment on 10.2 from Mac Worthy.
For the record, Mac, this should be the biggest discuss. This should be packed. It's a key component to the city of Sacramento, the property. But we don't see nothing because it's the dialogue of the city. This reason they use the springboard and go to the city. People, we are looking at some things here. The first priority to public property. That's a key component. You all have seen that. That's not the issue, people. And all of them are nonprofit organizations. That's why we're in the bind that we're in. You're looking at that same shot that you had up there. Bring it up. Right down at the bottom of it. Bottom part. That's the part, people. And you all going to vote on that tonight. Now, all those are nonprofit organizations. Mentality of the people here in this city is nonprofit. We don't see one piece of property was appraised, do we? What was the value of each piece of surplus property? That's not on here. What is the value of this piece of property downtown on N Street? Millions of dollars. When he was on Capitol, a friend of mine owned that building. When the city administration was in that building. That's what I know. People, all the workshop, nobody called the crazy guy Mac Worthy. Why? As many times as I put my name and phone number on paper, nobody called me about workshops. What to do with the school? Because I asked the question that nobody else going to ask. What is the value of that property? Why would you continue teaching these people non-profit? Because of the fact that's the power of political. Santa Claus in July with an anonymous check. That's who become the director of the program. That's who got control. That's who got control of friendship.
Thank you, Mr.
The public
Worthy.
don't have no control of who be employed to that property.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
To those programs,
I believe we
quit
have,
using these.
We do
Quit
have another
using
card.
the
Is that correct, Mr. Ross? Who do we have next? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Yeah, this is an information item. We're not taking any action tonight. It's a workshop. We're not taking any action this evening. It's strictly a workshop for the board to get better acquainted with the law and the process.
If this is going to be a workshop,
and to provide
if this is going to be a
input.
workshop, how are you going to find the time to go to a workshop for this? As much paperwork as this administration put out, and you're going to say you're going to go to a workshop
Thank you, Mr. Worthy. We appreciate your time.
and make a decision?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Mr. Ross?
We have two more comments on this item from Bay Miri and Taylor Hudson.
President Kennedy and board members, Bay Miri with DNS Development. Won't take too much of your time tonight, but just want to introduce myself. I'm with DNS Development, which was started by my father, David Miri, and Steve Labaschi, who's here with me tonight, DNS. And we're a local family-run boutique development firm here in Sacramento. And we focus primarily on midtown and downtown mixed use, market rate housing, workforce housing, boutique hotel, exciting local retail, restaurants, boutiques, etc. And you may be familiar with some of our projects. We're currently under construction a couple blocks away from the historic Jefferson School property at 16 Powerhouse, which is adjacent to Hot Italian, under construction right now. And will be done without any public subsidy on the building by December. We also did the Maidstone at 15th and J across from the Memorial Auditorium. And we did 14th and R. Hopefully some of you have been to Magpie or Burgers and Brew or Shady Lady or Muse Salon. And there was lofts above that we sold a few years ago. Just want to introduce myself. We've had our eye on the Jefferson School property for quite a long time. We love rehabbing historic buildings, especially in the Midtown, downtown core. Done it in Rancho, done it in Galt. And our goal is to maximize the amount of direct and indirect value to the school district through producing a project that creates the most amount of value on the site and results in the most income to the school district. We're going about this site in a way where we would treat it the same as if a friend came to us asking what we should do with a valuable asset that we have. So just wanted to introduce myself, and we're excited to work with staff in the school district. Thanks.
Thank you. And for the record, I don't know what the Shady Lady is. Mr. Ross?
While Mr. Hudson approaches the mic, I'll read our next two speakers' names, Mia Kang and Andrea Lisi.
Hi, good evening. My name is Taylor Hudson. I'm with Unite Here Local 49, the Hotel and Food Service Workers Union in the Sacramento area. We represent about 3,000 workers in primarily in hotels, casinos, and restaurants in the Sacramento airport, at Sleep Train Arena and elsewhere. Not here to take a position on how the district ought to use or dispose of the any surplus property, or the Jefferson School in particular. Just want to say that in light of the fact that one of the proposals that's been made is a hotel, that we want to urge the board to keep in mind and to ensure that labor disputes don't affect any of the revenue that the board should receive and would be expecting from development deals. The hotels that you are, I'm sure, familiar with, the Sheraton and the Citizen Hotel in downtown Sacramento, were both developed with guarantees of labor peace, and that is a requirement that public agencies can make when they have a proprietary interest in a development project, which of course you do with this property, and it protects obviously the agency from the possible financial effects of labor disputes. Those two hotels have been very successful and have also provided good jobs for Sacramento area residents. So I want to urge you to make sure that that would be the case with any hotel developed on this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening, members of the board and President Kennedy. I am Mia Kong, and I'm president of Domus Development. We are an affordable housing developer located in Sacramento. We have a proposal in front of you that also considered looking at the 16th and N site.
Technically not in front of us.
True, excuse me, that was provided to you earlier this year. That did conceive of the site as looking at the historic value, looking at the Surplus Act, and looking at the community benefits. And I hope that the board considers community benefits as being a strong component of what you do for the future of this property. We are partnering with the Sacramento Native American Health Center. We envision a project that could include a clinic, affordable housing, which is also under the state code a priority for surplus school property, as well as unique partnerships that we believe we could execute with the school district in terms of internships with the health clinic, a lot of partnerships where we can really look at, I think, a social equity element that could really, I think, go far beyond just the housing and the health benefits, but just the social equity piece of it, providing jobs, as well as housing opportunities for employees of the school district, as well as children and families of the district as well as really taking an innovative approach to a public-private partnership. And we hope that you will consider a community benefit that would go along with the reuse of the site, and that because it is public property, that there is a public purpose that the state has identified, that there are priorities within the Surplus Act, which include affordable housing as well as community benefits. And I think that proposals that meet those objectives should be considered very seriously, versus, frankly, just looking at sort of a dollars and cents perspective, if we're just going to say what's the absolute most we can get for it, or what can we do as far as a legacy. So I hope you might consider the legacy of this site. I think you might be aware that this site really was one of the first schools that were segregated. And so sort of looking at the future of what might be, I think correcting that past might be a very interesting way to move us forward. And its proximity, I think, really deserves a historic preservation, taking it to the national levels, historic preservation, as well as a community benefit. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Following Ms. Lisi, we do have one more comment from Deanna Ellis.
Good evening. My name's Andrea Lisi. I'm an attorney with Ramey Moose Manley. We're counsel to the Sacramento Native American Health Center and Domus Development. And I just wanted to reiterate what Mia Kang had to say, in the sense that the government code provisions provide for, whenever there's surplus public lands, that a priority system be given to uses such as those for affordable housing. And we've submitted 2 letters. I hope all of you have had the pleasure of reading them. It's been about 2-3 months since our first letter was submitted. That points to Government Code Section 54222, which provides that prior to disposal of surplus property, that the district or a public entity must send a written offer to sell or lease the property to specific entities. This means the district must send a written offer to sell or lease surplus lands for the purpose of developing low and moderate income housing to certain public entities and housing sponsors that submit a written request. And we submitted a written request back in April pursuant to this provision. So that's supposed to kick off a 60-day time frame for negotiations. If the district's unable to reach an agreement with our client within that time frame, then it can go forward with a potential public sale, but not beforehand. So I think that the options charts might be a little misleading, in the sense that you have co-equal, ability to choose under the law. And the legislature's intent for doing so, I think, is that if, it was always just purely market rate apartments or condos to which an entity could sell, then of course that use is always going to win out. I mean, pure market rates always going to be able to maybe, pay more or generate more in revenue. Our client's proposing to submit a fair market value bid and is hoping, like they say, to reach a public-private partnership. So thank you for your time. If any of you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you.
Is this the last speaker, Mr. Rose?
Dina Ellis with Cressley Homes. Good evening, Board and President Kennedy. I'm speaking on behalf of the Hodgsons and Cressley Homes proposal, shouldn't say proposal, but a submission that we actually made to the district. A couple of things. I think that, in our opinion, the district should be making the decision that is in the best interest of the district, not in the best interest potentially of the full community, but what is in the best fiscal interest of the district. Additionally, I think we would like to see an opportunity to be able to potentially revise our proposal. Land use is certainly not vested with this particular board, and that there's, if the board is going to weigh into proposals of what is community use, that the surrounding neighbors and businesses should have an opportunity to be able to weigh in on those decisions. So just wanted to introduce ourselves this evening and to let you know that we look forward to this process.
Thank you. Okay, that's all the public comment. Vice President Pritchett.
Thank you. Ms. Allen. I just have a quick question about surplus properties. I know I've asked in the past for a list of all surplus properties, and I have not received that as a board. At least for me, I have not received that. I did notice in the board packet that you show 3 properties: Thomas Jefferson, Old Marshall, and the 23rd and G. Is that correct? Or 4? I guess the 24th and Florin. So 4. That's not our only surplus properties, right?
Well, ironically, we actually don't have surplus property. So what we did was we went back and looked at board meetings when at the former 7-Eleven committee gave a recommendation to the board, and the board accepted the report, but there's never actually been a resolution to declare any of the properties surplus. I know, which is kind of odd. We thought the same thing as well, but right now there's really those 3 properties that have been kind of raised to the level of discussion. So it's 16th and N, the 24th and Florin, and then Old Marshall, which is 23rd and something G. And yeah.
Okay, so I want to make a formal request. I would like a list of all of our empty properties that we have in our district.
Okay, empty I can do.
Thank you.
Member Cuneo.
Thank you, Member Kennedy. So I'll briefly respond to the items on the workshop discussion, mostly just from the experience that I had. So my involvement, I guess, in this thing came because of what I felt were some over kind of bearing influences internally about kind of what was getting communicated to us, how it was getting communicated to us, and the manner in which it was presented. And so I don't know really how to answer your first three questions. I think they're important. I do say, though, but given the experience and kind of the discussions we've had and how things have come in fits and starts, and it's been difficult to gauge exactly who said what to whom. I guess I lean very strongly on the side of transparency in regard to these issues, and I lean very strongly to having the discussion and the vetting done publicly, even if there might be some adverse consequences to parties in regards to confidential communications. And I don't know enough about the issue to know exactly where that can be found. So that's kind of where I come from. You know, I was disheartened in this process to kind of have people come out of the woodwork and request meetings with me and say, you know, you guys have already made this arrangement and we haven't had the opportunity to be vetted and things like that. And I think when you're dealing with public properties and community assets, that the transparency and the vetting needs to be done as above board as possible, given the sensitivity of these matters and whatever confidentiality concerns there might be. So that's, good luck with that. I don't know where the sweet spot is. But I think the last thing I'd like to just say too, you know, for me, if there can be some analysis, you know, we talk about, okay, what's the analysis around district needs, community interest, private interest, et cetera. There can be some analysis that, you know, how this benefits our kids, just some kind of, at least, understanding of how we're going to actually benefit the people we serve by doing X, Y, or Z. That would be my preference, to have at least some discussion in regard to that. So, thanks.
Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Kennedy. You know, I've been doing some research with other boards and discussing with them, you know, with their board members. Have you sold property and where are you at today? And a particular couple of board members that I spoke with had said, yes, the district had sold property years prior, without much regard to what population would look like in the future. They were in the same situation we find ourselves in today, declining enrollment and too many properties. And so they took up on the opportunity to sell, and they no longer have school sites. Well, here we are, they say, here we are, you know, 15 years down the line, and we had to go out to get a bond to buy property to build schools because they're bursting at the seams. So I think that my warning to the board here is that we be extremely thoughtful about this process. And really looking at data. You know, have we looked at the census data that we have most recent available to us? Have we looked at birth rates in and around these empty school sites that we have? What does a prediction look like in the future if we do some trend analysis of birth rates or mobility of individual areas around these sites? What is that telling us? We may find that we may want to hold on to some of these empty properties because we will see population growth and we'll find ourselves having to go out asking our voters to approve yet another bond so that we can buy property. So I don't want to find this board in a situation like that in 10 years, 15 years down the line, just because we say today the picture looks like this. in addition to that, when we look at on page 2, what are the goals of the district? And there was a mention about programmatic goals. And we would ask for the financial, what would it mean financially for our district? Now, this is a legal question. I know that when we're taking into consideration charter proposals, we cannot take into we cannot look into the whole fact of the financial impact that they'll be making upon our district. But if a charter were to so choose to be interested in buying one of these properties, can we look at their impact at that point financially onto our district, or is that off limits still?
Member Rodriguez, that's something I think I should think about and study a little bit. I can tell you, just looking at the education code, no, that we are required to make a series of offers. Some we're required to make outright to various public agencies. Some we're required to make when an entity has given us a written expression of interest. And charter schools fall into that. So if there is a charter school that meets the criteria, we're required to make an offer. And for charter schools in particular, there's a cap on the price, which is the acquisition costs plus a lot of other factors which are very complicated. So that's the process laid out in the statute, and it's solely focused on what's the cost to the district of acquiring and owning the property, and that's the cap on the price. Most, probably all of the other options are a little bit more free-flowing negotiation. And then, of course, there's the third category, which involves competitive bids. So I think the answer is no, but if there's any further discussion or flexibility to be had there, I'll inform you all of it, okay?
I trust that you're going to research that question. Thanks. And it didn't come up until I heard it come through right now on the presentation. So otherwise, I probably would have asked it beforehand. But I apologize.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. On page number 3, Ms. Allen, our member Cuneo had pointed out about the first 3 bullets and providing some, or maybe not being able to provide feedback at this point. But I think I'd like to address my colleagues on the board that the first 4 bullets should be really discussed as a board as a whole with our superintendent, and perhaps we should take the meeting down like we do our real workshops onto the floor, and we have a discussion just around this piece, because I think it's premature to be talking about all of this other stuff without even talking about a process, to bring proposals to the board, without talking about how do we communicate some of these things. We need to lay a good foundation and a roadmap in order to give more clear direction to you, Ms. Ellen, so that you're not being set up to fail here on this, but you're being set up to follow a procedure and a process that the board has adopted and has created with community input, and that serves you very well in fulfilling the duties of your position. So I would offer that feedback to my colleagues, and I'd like to see us have that workshop.
Member Rodriguez, if I can just address that, if that's okay. You're right. You're absolutely right, and that's what I see. This is the first step in that. It's like the way I looked at it, and until we have information, we don't even know what to discuss. This is so technical. This is so complex. I mean, this is not an easy thing to talk about. So this is really intended to give us the information to start that discussion. So I don't think that anybody has the intention of this being an end all of any kind. And I agree with you. I mean, we should do it down the floor. I mean, I don't disagree with you at all.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe we can have a special workshop or something scheduled. And then I just want to ask a question of one of our public commenters on this item from DNS Development. I understood your comments to mean that you would like to work with the district in rehabbing that particular property, or is your interest in buying the property and then working with us? I'm a little confused about your comments. If you can clarify a little for me.
Let's just be a little careful about going. Member asked a question, answer, but we want to be careful about talking about proposals because there's other proposers in the audience, and so let's not go too much into it.
Sure. So our interest is, I guess we feel right now that it's in the very early stages of this process, clearly. And what we've envisioned over the last couple of years is to not necessarily purchase the property from the school district, but rather do a ground lease and provide direct income to the school district. And that way, the school district retains an asset that we feel is a very valuable asset that the school district should retain. And then go out and, through our experience, the type of projects I mentioned, mixed use, hotel, low-income housing, workforce housing, market rate housing, come up with a development that also maximizes the value on the site, also has a strong community benefit to it as well, not strictly looking at the property from a dollars and cents perspective. And through dialogue with the school district, through a true public-private partnership, come up with what's a collective best-case scenario for the site, for both indirect and direct income. I hope that helps clarify.
Clarifies it. Thank you.
That all, Member Rodriguez?
Yeah, that's it. I just, in regards to the census data, how difficult is that to get, and how do you see this, information gathering, and what point can you bring it back to the board?
Well, getting the information is very easy, and plotting it out to see what our enrollment looks like down the road is also very easy. The only thing I would add that would be unique to these three particular sites that we're talking about is that they're not Field Act approved sites. So even if we had a big boom in enrollment, we'd want to seriously weigh what the cost would be to turn one of those buildings into a Field Act approved, therefore able to be occupied by students and staff, versus, maybe it makes more sense to add on to an existing school site that is already Field Act approved. And then at 24th and Florin, there was never a school there. We have a few portables there, but
no, we had a school. We had a school. It was an adult ed,
right?
And
we
have a big need for adult ed back in that community. So yeah.
The main building was a retail, a car dealership. So obviously not built under Field Act. So the conversation would be different if we were talking about any of the 7 recently closed school sites, because those are all Field Act approved and could certainly reopen again if we had a big boom in population. So yes, we can project with census data and cohort survival, et cetera, where we think the numbers are coming in at over a period of time. Once you go past 5 years, you get a little, you're assuming a lot. Be happy to bring that back at another discussion.
So you don't have to bring it back next board meeting, but I was just kind of asking, what would you envision, and how would you see that information gathering look like, and when could you bring it back? I'm not asking like next board meeting,
right.
But maybe
well, I think,
you would think, hey guys, vet out some process, and then I could go and do the research, or what are your ideas? And
so if we were to do some enrollment projections district-wide, that would be a whole meeting unto itself. So if we were to narrow it down and say, could you do some enrollment projections for this area, so that we can see where the kids are going, where the kids are coming from, et cetera, that might be a little easier to get to in a quicker manner and might help this discussion move forward. Again, the 16th and N is what started this whole thing off, and we're piggybacking Old Marshall and Florin and 24th onto the process, because the process, whatever the board decides should apply to the same to all 3 of those sites. So if the request is to bring back enrollment data projections for this particular area, we could do that fairly quickly. If it's for the whole district, I think that's a whole nother board topic item, not related to surplus property necessarily.
Can I ask you then to do a modification to the list that Vice President Pritchett asked for about our empty facilities? When you bring that list back, can you identify which ones are Field Act compliant and which ones are not? So that way we know as a board, we need to separate these types of facilities out.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Am I doing enrollment projections for a site? Not yet, maybe?
I think, yeah. I think if you have them, but right now, to just get the list together. I want to be fair. I know that there's limited staffing. I want to be fair with that, but I also want you to have it on your list. That's going to be asked for. So
just so I'm clear, I'm making the assumption that we're bringing this back at the same time that we're doing a workshop down on the floor, either in a special board meeting or or during the regular scheduled board meeting. Okay.
Member Hanson.
Thank you. A couple questions. One, have we declared any property surplus right now?
No.
So we still have to do that before we can even move to the next step.
Right, and so I'm glad you brought that up because one of the speakers mentioned that submittal of a formal request kicked off a 60-day thing, and really we're a little ahead of that because we haven't declared the property surplus yet.
What's the process for us if we want to declare property surplus? I know
A resolution by the board, 2/3? No, simple majority resolution.
Mm-hmm. And of all the, for instance, obviously the big topic is the 14th and N facility at this point in time, even though, I know we're going to set parameters for how we deal with all properties going forward. Has that already been subject of a 7-Eleven committee review at some point in the distant past?
Yes. There was a prior 7-Eleven that brought a recommendation to the board, which was accepted, but there was never formal action taken.
What was the recommendation? Was it to surplus the property?
I don't
remember.
I don't think it was. I think pretty much 7-Elevens will say, don't surplus. Try and lease it out.
I think that'd be valuable for us to get that information, just because I'm sure it was some time ago. It was before my time. I've only been here 2 years, but probably went back many since that property's been sitting vacant for a decade.
Okay.
To me, just a little, my point, it is a bit of a blight downtown. As I mentioned to other members on the board, I'd always been cursing the city all these years, thinking it was a vacant city lot. And then when I got on the board and found it actually was ours, and look in the mirror and say we haven't done anything with that. But I know there'd been very limited interest for several years when our economy was in the place it was, and now it's exciting to have a variety of people who are interested in doing something with it. So that points to a lot of things to me. One, obviously, Sacramento's turning around, the economy's turning around. That's exciting and good news. The fact that the city, that Sac City has a valuable piece of property that doesn't elude any of us to, and that there's some benefit that's going to accrue to the school district. I'm interested in several different things. Let me just finish on that first before I talk about these. But I think that it's clear we're not going to use this for a school facility anytime in the foreseeable future, maybe never, because I don't know that it's Field Act compliant or fulfills the requirements of us being able to put students back into that facility. So I'd like to know what the process is. I do think at some point, my fellow board members, that we're going to have to declare this property surplus because nothing can move forward with any of these proposals until we actually start that. And it'd be good for us to know, what happens when we make that declaration, what kind of clocks get started if folks are going to submit letters and making requests of facilities. So we understand what that means when we take that vote. And I hope that we don't sit on this for too many more months or board meetings. I do think it's that we should make some movement on this at some point, fairly expedited process so we can at least see what our options are going forward. It's still obviously going to be a multi-month process before we're in the position to reach any kind of an agreement with any of the folks who are interested in doing something with that property. And then we can continue to work on things that we think are the parameters that we should look at for this property and all the other properties. So, that being said, I don't think, we need to keep talking about this forever, but I would like us to have some kind of a timeline proposed to us, I assume by you, Ms. Allen, of what the timeline should be when we actually take a formal vote on whether we're going to declare this particular property, the 14th and N, a surplus property or not. But, we certainly should see what the 7-Eleven committee had proposed back in the day, so at least have that information and can try to make that determination sometime soon. On on the points of what I think we should be looking at, when we make those decisions and how we prioritize what the uses should be. One, I'm looking at at the slide that you have in front of us, and the district needs, to me, should be two things that we look at. One certainly should be whatever financial benefit accrues to the district. I think that's important for us as good fiscal stewards to the taxpayers who have entrusted us with that job and sitting here on the board. And then secondly, I do think that we should examine educational opportunities that might arise for the use of these properties. I'm not of the belief that that we're incapable of making a decision to do anything of extra value with the property and just turn it over to the city and let them decide what's going to be on an old school site. I think we have a responsibility to our students and families and parents and staff to try to get the most benefit out of it educationally as well as financially. And I would prioritize that, like you have, above community interest. I appreciate you bringing that. And some of the other things I've talked about with a variety of people, but I think it would be an exciting proposal for us to talk about something that's been done in other school districts, and that's when there's low-income housing or subsidized housing that can be part of a project. Why couldn't we ask for a certain number of units be set aside for staff? We have low-income staff that are part of our staff. They're part-time employees. We're not in a position to pay them kind of salary that would enable them to be in different parts of our city. And before we become a city like San Francisco or others where folks that live and work there can't even afford, or folks that work there can't afford to live there, it would be great for us to consider having some set aside of that. And what would be the process for building that into a potential agreement with folks who are looking at doing some partnerships with us. I think that's my last comment, but I certainly would like to see some follow-up in particular on making a decision on declaring this property surplus at some point in the next couple board meetings here and moving forward with that and not having endless workshops. Thank you.
Arroyo.
Sorry. I'll keep my composure now. I have many questions, and some of them are, I'm just trying to put my arms around everything. One of them is, I thought I heard you say that we can't act on any proposals right now.
Correct. The first step would be to declare a property surplus.
But we were we were recommended to act on something earlier this year.
Well,
why then and not now?
Well, we were bringing forth the concept of an exchange. So if you go back to the slide that was on the left and stuff was on the right, staff was looking at the possibility of an exchange, which still requires the property being declared surplus, but it is one of those exceptions that the board may use after it is declared surplus. So if the board declares a property surplus and wants to use it to exchange it for another piece of property, you don't have to go down on the right-hand side. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And I do have many questions that stem out of that one question, but I'll save us the time to go through that process, because I do have a lot of questions about how we ended up with that process, and cut to the chase to the question of how do we develop. A lot has been mentioned already by other board members on the process of how to bring items to the board. And what I had mentioned in previous meetings, said it in a public meeting a couple of times before, and I will ask again, is as we look at what that proposal is, I really want to get to the recommendation of a new board policy that directs the board on the information when items come to the district for consideration. Meaning, I know that there are issues of confidentiality with proposals. We don't have to disclose that, but I really don't want to come again to the process where staff has done a year's worth of work of looking into certain options or option and then start from scratch. And so I really want to know when, I really want to use what happened over the last year as kind of case study to figure out what happened and what can we learn from that. And so if I think of that one particular proposal that was being considered, what would we have rather see? Meaning a proposal comes in and then it's mentioned to the board and then we have an opportunity to discuss it and then maybe bring it for a hearing. I can't think of all the permutations of options that we can have, but I really want a board policy that pretty much spells out when we have a property and there are there's one or multiple proposals, what is that we do first? And I want to make sure that there are plenty of options or opportunities for the board to know about the project, to consider it for public hearings. We're talking about a property of great significance, 16th and N. You mentioned in a conversation once that it may be worth a lot to some, but I mean, to us, it means little because we have this huge property in the middle of it that we can do nothing with, right? So, but nonetheless, in the end, we have to make that decision, and I think that before staff does any significant amount of work, that the board is aware of it and gives the proper direction on either the policy or the interest or the benefit that we want to get out of that particular property. So, having said that, I would ask President Kennedy and or other board members as far as is this an action that the board takes through the policy committee to come up with something, or do we hear back from staff? I'm putting it out there because I think that this is where I would like to see the district move on that particular component. I think that you're doing a great job on breaking down what the statute says, right, for the state of California as how we are supposed to act, but internally as a board, that's where I want to now take from and then fill the gaps there and then be very clear from now on how we deal with any given property.
So you've heard me mention trigger, what triggers bringing something to the board, and I'll give you a great example. So got a phone call the other day saying this gentleman was interested in touring Old Marshall. We set up a tour, waited 45 minutes, and he was a no-show. So is that something that would trigger bringing something to the board? I don't know. That's up to you guys to let us know. But all the way from there to a full-blown proposal for, a multi-story something with other things. I mean, we get that kind of stuff a lot. So
if I see the extremes, that as to where you don't know where the initial step is, to the other extreme where we are actually given a consideration for a specific proposal to consider to adopt, right? That's, the other extreme.
Right.
And what I'm trying to avoid us is being in closed session or at the board with only one proposal when we really have not had an opportunity to really delve into it, right?
Sure.
Or know much about it, or the community for that matter to comment on it. And so walking our way backwards, perhaps. And that's when I mentioned that perhaps we can use what just happened over the last year as a model to figure out where can we use that as a tool to learn how to avoid that. So it could start with when there's an official proposal or when obviously you were given direction to do work on it, right? Is that the point where the board should know? And that policy, I think it would be great and maybe, as I mentioned, maybe it's a comment or the work of the policy committee that comes together as a board. And I would like to hear from my fellow board members what they're obviously I don't have the power or the wherewithal to say the policy committee will meet to and then entrust them to do that kind of work. But I think that that's something that we should consider as a board. So that's that's my primordial concern and interest, and I think that that's where we need to go. And then on the, I just need clarification on the public comment. You just mentioned it on the 60-day action that we need to do. Can you explain a little bit, either what she meant or what you meant? I hear two stories, and I just want to make sure that we are clear on what that is.
Board Member Arroyo, a good question. Ms. Allen's comment was that we are not yet at the box that says declare surplus by simple board majority. Once that happens, and property or properties are declared surplus, then the items on the left, if there is interest or offers, then you can go through some of these possibilities of land exchange, historic building, or perhaps a state board waiver. Those are discretionary. Then, before we get down to a competitive sale, you're required to go through those other offers first. So there would be 1 or 2 or 3 windows that we would start. As a district, we would push the start button on it. And then at that point, all the various statutory offers are made. And then if a response and a proposal is given that meets the requirements, then we enter into that 60-day negotiations window. And there is a 60-day negotiations window on some but not all of the options. So the commenter was saying, we're at that point, and Ms. Allen's point was we're not there yet. But if there is an offer and then a proposal that meets the requirements, then we will be entering into negotiations phases. Does that answer your question, sir?
Well, yes, I understand your explanation. What it does not answer is that there's a law firm, I'm sure that they know what they're talking about, differs on the district's perspective on are we there yet or not. And I don't know if they are 100% sure that the clock is ticking already, and we're just disagreeing on the law, and maybe I can ask the person that came to comment what footing do they feel they have to consider this the 60-day?
I'd suggest that we can certainly engage in a necessary conversation to make sure that any concerns about that process are assuaged.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be right now. This is my concern or my perspective. It's not a comment. I think it's their legal evaluation. I think that, or their legal opinion. It's not just a comment. And I just want to make sure that we are on par with, if they have a perspective of the law, are we in disagreement, or is there something that we are not considering? And I just want us to be on solid ground. That's all.
I can say that the offer has not been made, so that there's no way that the 60-day window or other windows can be open.
The offer has not been made by us.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we will certainly respect all of those expressions of interest that have been brought forward and others that may be brought forward, but I can say with certainty that until we, the district, make an offer, then there can be no formal responses and then negotiations. And certainly, if persons have already put forward documents, the district would consider that and make sure that these persons are contacted again as required.
Alrighty. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm just going to make a couple of comments. Sit down or go away or whatever you want to do.
Maybe I should stay.
That's that. This is really, hard. I mean, it's from a legal perspective, a technical perspective. This is really a lot of heavy lifting. From a public policy standpoint, it's some real heavy lifting. And from the fiduciary duty that we as board members have, this is real heavy lifting. So this is really difficult. And so we're weighing two needs here. One is to do it right and do it with all of the necessary information that we as board members need to make decisions in the future. We're also doing it, under this is the real world of real estate transactions. Doesn't just stand still. So it's those two competing interests. Of course, we're going to err on the side of being cautious. Not disturbing you, am I, Mr. Wu? So I'm glad that we got some good input in today. The work that staff has already done, and this table was extremely helpful. Appreciate that, and the work that you've done already is helping to kind of explain where we're at and what the the legal limitations are, and I think there's a lot more of that to be done. So my recommendation is to go forward and have a workshop, as Member Rodriguez, a special workshop just on this, but don't wait a whole lot of time. We have given staff some direction with some more questions and pointed issues. I do think that Member Arroyo is absolutely right that we need a formalized process going forward in the future. I think that should be a byproduct of that workshop and be on the agenda for that workshop rather than having a separate policy committee or something to do it. I think that the board can do that and as a part of that workshop and sooner rather than later. Is there any disagreement from the board?
There's some very interesting concepts out there that districts are now adopting. So, long-term ground leases that are a joint venture with the school district and the developer to provide the assisted living housing, or there's some pretty cool stuff that's out there. So
well, please bring that forward when we have the workshop.
Got it.
Good. Thank you very much. 10.3, Bond Oversight Committee Annual Report. Ms. Allen, you're having a good night.
It's my night, huh? Yeah. Well, I'm only here just briefly. I'm going to introduce our Bond Oversight Committee Chair and Vice Chair and ask them to come up and present to the board the annual report. This is a duty of their role as Chair and Vice Chair. So Lawson Stewart is our Chair and Rachel Minnick is our Vice Chair. And I'm going to turn it over to them and get out of the way.
Brought it back up because, of course, this would be the week that I lose my voice.
Your name for the record, sir?
My name is Lawson Stewart, and it is my privilege to serve as the chair of the Bond Oversight Committee. As chair of the Bond Oversight Committee, I wish all of you a good evening, and I especially am happy to see and welcome our new student member. I will be handing over part of this to the Vice Chair, Rachel Minnick, because I can only talk for so long before my voice completely goes away. With us, we also have Alex Visaya, one of our members. With the approval of Proposition 39, it was amended to that it required all districts to, of course, have a Bond Oversight Committee and have this committee serve as a pathway for members of the general public with some specifications on how the committee is comprised to oversee retroactively the different actions of public approved bonds. This report will cover the last part of Measure I, which was approved in 2002, and be the final report on Measure I as this committee will transition to, and actually already has transitioned to, oversight of Measures Q and R. Currently, the Bond Oversight Committee consists of myself, Lawson Stewart serving as the chair after being chosen by my colleagues, and I am on the committee as a parent of children in the district. Ms. Rachel Minnick is serving as the vice chair and is also a parent of children in the district. Our elected secretary for the board for the committee is Maria Harrow-Sullivan, who is also a parent of children in the district. My predecessor is Carol Daydova, the past chair and a representative of the business community. Ms. Minnick is preceded by still current member Adolfo Mercado, who is again our past vice chair and a representative of the business community. We have Alex Visaya, who is a professional school board committee member and also serves as a representative of Senior Citizens Organization. We have James Price, who is a member and active member of a taxpayers organization. Thank you. Keep going. John Andrew, who serves as a member and parent of children in the district. Dave O'Toole, who serves as a member and parent of children in the district. And Cesar Diaz, who also is a member and serves as a parent of children in the district. We are assisted by outstanding staff, Ms. Kathy Allen, Mr. Jim Dobson, Elena Hankard, who keeps me in line most of the time with the documents and agenda, and Ms. Amari Watkins is also present at all of our meetings to present on some of the accounting and provide a lot of expertise for the different answers. At the February 2014 meeting of our Bond Oversight Committee, we were presented by a representative of a company called Crowe Horwath with the Measure I General Obligation Bonds Performance Audit. I am pleased to report that all is in full compliance with the law, regulations, and practices of the district. All accounting has been checked and double-checked. Specifically, during the reporting period audited, expenditures totaled $4,052,927, all of which was reviewed and, again, found in full compliance. This was the final audit of Measure I funding, as that is now closed out, and we are moving to oversight of Measures Q and R. We have met 3 times since our last report. Each of our meetings has included the ability to tour some of the work that either was going to be done, was in the process of being done, or had recently been completed. And really want to thank Ms. Allen and her staff for the opportunity each of the committee members has had at each one of these meetings to ask many questions and learn a lot about the different projects that are going on. And I would like to pass on over to Vice Chair Rachel Minnick.
Okay, so when the previous annual report came out, the presenters made 3 recommendations for this year that we just completed. The first being a back-end review, and really just in regular person terms, because I went, what is that? The challenge with the Oversight Committee is that we are an after-the-fact committee. We get to look at the expenditures when they've been spent. So as a member of this committee, we had questions about the decision-making process, the priorities, how they were set, and any information that we could get about what led up to the expenditures. And so we requested that staff provide us some pretty extensive information, and I believe that over the past year they've done a good job of answering our questions for the many different questions that we posed over the last year. The other challenge that we had was when the bonds were passed, Superintendent Raymond created a bond steering committee, and that was not a committee bound by the Brown Act, but just one that helped make recommendations about the use of bond funds. So what we asked as a Brown Act committee was, could we have a shared board member? So Mr. Visaya, we voted as a board, and Mr. Visaya served as a member of the steering committee, but also as a member of the oversight committee. So there was some level of communication between our 2 groups. And then lastly, the previous group suggested that we have support staff for the oversight committee. So clearly that's been provided to us. So here we go. So this year we have our own new recommendations. Very exciting. Number 1, the most important part of this funding, and what we never forget when we meet, is that this is about kids. And who knows better about facilities and what it is like to go to school than a student. So we would like to recommend that we appoint a high school student member to the Bond Oversight Committee in the future, and knowing that that wouldn't be a voting member of our committee, but would be able to provide input and help us really understand the decisions, especially as we're touring facilities and looking at the work that's been done. So that's our first recommendation. Secondly, really it's additional reporting requests, and I think we're moving forward with this. Currently, the system in place to help us understand all of the building projects and the different steps and the expenditures is a little cumbersome and a little hard for us to understand, especially since we're regular people. I'm not a builder. I'm not an analyst in any way that can sometimes make sense of some of these projects. So there's new software coming in called is it eBuilder, Kathy? It's called eBuilder. So I think that is going to help us with this recommendation of having more detailed reports that help us understand why the money was spent the way that it was. And then lastly, just continued interaction with the Bond Steering Committee. I'm not sure what the incoming superintendent will choose to do with that committee. If it still exists, we would like to continue to have interaction with the Bond Steering Committee. And then lastly, just our oversight functioning. I think we've worked to have a good relationship with one another, with staff and with the board. If there's questions that you have about things that we've done. We're certainly interested in helping. We have a very robust website on the district's website that provides information about all of our membership, all of Bonds Q&R, so that the public can understand the projects, what's done, and why. That's
That'll conclude
our report. Thank you.
We have no public cards, so we will start with Vice President Pritchett.
Thank you, President Kennedy. Thank you for your hard work. I know that it's a lot going through all of that, and so I just appreciate, and I hope you can relay that to the rest of your committee, that we really do appreciate that. I do have some questions for Ms. Allen. That I was kind of hoping in this report that we would show what has been done, how much money was spent, some kind of audit report that may that there's nothing that I saw in this packet. Is that something that you could please send out to the board, and knowing what projects have been done, what's on the schedule, what's coming up?
So we do report that on our webpage. So maybe instead of sending you the actual report, can I send you a link? Would that work?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Please, can you just please direct me? And that'll, I guess I'll look on that and I can ask the questions from there of, if I have additional questions. Because that gives, what the dollar amounts and when they're scheduled, if they're finished, it gives everything.
Well, as Rachel mentioned, we're a little challenged with our software, and you've heard our CBO lament about some of the challenges that we have. So it's kind of pieced together at this time. I would say 90% yes to your question. There might be the occasional, we don't have a report for that. eBuilder will really allow us to drill down and literally list item by item everything for a particular project, which is going to be wonderful for the the community and the board and everyone. Amari's done a wonderful job compiling reports annually. If you remember, the BOC is always a year behind, so we report on the prior year's expenditures. But we do certainly have is complete and where we are. Secondary to that, we have our own internal document that we update weekly in terms of current projects. So it'll be a morphing of eBuilder's capabilities and then the stuff that we already have in-house to be able to share a lot of that information again, and all that stuff's on the BOC website.
It's something the board is reminded, and certainly executive staff has had this information. We did intend to have a second bond presentation today regarding that information, but because Mr. Forrest was unable to attend today, we wanted to wait until he was here. Yeah. So that is coming at the next board meeting, assuming that Mr. Forrest is available at that time, but I do believe with his expertise, we need that. Otherwise, we're going to end up with more questions than not. So as soon as he's available, we will bring that presentation back, and certainly we were prepared for that this evening.
Thank you for the reminder. I do remember we speaking about that. But my question is on the website. Does it say, for public use, does it say which bond it came from, how much is left in those bonds, how much detail is on there?
Let's see. Some of the reports that we've provided to the BOC does have that information. It may not say out of Measure I there's $10 left. You could find it. It's just going to be more difficult to find it, again, which is another reason why we've got this new program, and we've spent the entire week getting trained on it. So I would say towards the end of this fiscal year or so, November, December, we'll be rolling out some of that information that's all in one place. So again, I apologize to answer your question this way. I can get it to you. It's just not going to be in one nice little report. So I'm going to have to get a report on maybe a Measure I expenditures over here, how much might be left over here. So I think that was one of the recommendations. It'd sure be nice to have it all in one place, and it would, and we're heading that direction.
Okay. And please, if you could send out that link to all board members, I think it's important for all of us to know. Thank you.
I'd be happy to do that.
Member Cuneo.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for all your hard work on the committee. The recommendations, I think, are outstanding. The one thought that kind of stuck in my head, this is and maybe this is more for staff, this is a statutorily created committee, correct? And are they prescribed to do what they do, right?
Yes.
And are they limited to this? And what I'm thinking, and I'll back up and say this, to me, it makes sense that they, check that we're following the law and doing the things that we said we'd do when we set out to do it. But it also makes some sense that they actually have some input around the quality of the decisions and the quality of the products that are being done in our district. And sometimes this committee does its legally circumscribed duties, but I think they could do a little bit more and give us a little more insight at the end result piece about, are we making good decisions with our bond monies? Do we find these to be good decisions? And are the projects that are actually being completed good projects?
That's one of probably the biggest frustration that BOC committees have, and I've run into this in several districts, is that they really are, as Rachel said, an after-the-fact committee, as very prescribed by Ed Code and Prop 39. So I don't disagree with you.
Are they not able to do that?
I think as a public citizen, they can certainly have that information. Anybody can have that information. It's just not the word I'm looking for. It's not the purpose of the Bond Oversight Committee. So, and I can also send you the link to the training that we give the Bond Oversight Committee in terms of here are your duties.
They can't do that? Does the law say they cannot do that?
Member Cuneo, the board has the discretion to expand the scope of many committees, including the Bond Oversight Committee.
Okay, I appreciate that. So I guess my recommendation on that would be that we should expand the scope of the Bond Oversight Committee. I've been hearing from them for 3-4 years now. I just think it makes sense that the information that they review can actually be, if we're going to have a bond steering committee, I think it could inform their work. It could inform future decisions that we make on how to spend bond money. I hear that they're itching to make those sorts of recommendations. And so if you're going to have all this talent in a room and you're going to have these thoughtful people, it would make sense to me that they impact a system to improve it, because they're the ones at the end of the day that get to see the finished product. And I might be in the minority here, but.
Well, my only comment, and I think we need to look at this a little bit further, especially when Ken Forrest comes back, because we don't want the bond, and no offense, but we don't want the Bond Oversight Committee making decisions that the board might normally make. So maybe we could discuss that during that meeting.
But they can't by process, because they're at the end of the process. All they're doing is looking at what has been done.
That's
correct?
What they're prescribed by law to do right now, yes.
Right. So I'm not suggesting they usurp any sort of board prerogative or power. All I'm just suggesting is that it seems to me there's a confluence of factors and things going on that could lend itself to a more robust analysis by this committee. Just, not a gotcha kind of thing, but just, are we doing well with this money? Are these good decisions, in the rearview mirror? Are the projects good looking back? I don't know. I could be in the minority, but that would be my suggestion.
If I could be permitted to speak from the perspective of the chair of the committee as opposed to representing the committee's opinion specifically, I have found that is definitely a desire. In fact, there are people who participate with the committee or have participated in the past who were disappointed to discover that the scope is particularly limited. And I understand that we need to remain within the confines of the law, and I do think that it's important, if we do move forward with expanding the scope of the committee, that we are careful to ensure that we do our primary job. But many of the members, including...
Don't neglect your primary job.
Absolutely.
All I'm saying is, it sounds like you want to do this. You want to expand, right? And to me, I don't, unless I'm missing something, what is the downside? What is the negative effect of having smart, capable, committed people letting us know their opinion about the quality of the decisions that were made around the bond monies and the quality of the products that were delivered by the contractors and subcontractors, et cetera?
Additionally, in an ideal situation, the group somewhat has its own representation, not at the same level as members of the board, but of course, comprised as it is, my understanding is the purpose is that we have a way to go back and communicate to fellow parents and others what we're seeing with the bond. So expanding the general public's knowledge of what the BOC does, what it is limited to in certain circumstances, and what we can potentially add to it would also be something I would humbly recommend be considered along with all of this.
Part of the work moving forward that we've planned and many board members have asked for is the board to work on the process by which we use to spend our bond money. So I think when we go through that in this next couple board meetings, we need to take a look at the bond oversight, bond steering, and then also the process by which we make these decisions, and then reflect back on the back end of it. That is coming forward, in addition to showing folks where we're currently planning to spend current funds. So that is in the works in this next couple months as we work with the surplus property. So we can put that all together.
I appreciate that.
I'd just like to add one more thought to that as well. With the Bond Oversight Committee, we are bound by the Brown Act, so everything that we do is public, and it has to be. And we were appointed by the board. So the decisions that we make have already, and who is on the board and what we can and cannot do is very public, and it's a decision-making process that each one of you has had input on as to who serves on the board. So I think that's the other element to this. When you talk about expanding the Oversight Committee, there's a level of oversight that you have had over us already. And so that's, I think, in the public interest and for transparency, I think that's an advantage. And I'm speaking on my own behalf. I'm not trying to speak on behalf of the rest of the board, but it's just a thought that I've had over the past year on this committee that, we represent the voice of the people, but we were brought here because of all of you. So just something to think about in the decision-making process for that.
Actually, we were brought here because of you. Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, Pat. President Kennedy.
Let's get informal.
Starts with the P. Starts with a P. I was going to say Patrick Kennedy, but no, it's President Kennedy. First of all, I want to thank you, all of you who sit on the Bond Oversight Committee. You guys do a thankless job. We think we do it. You guys do a tremendous amount of heavy lifting and review and make sure that there's a lot of due diligence done for us on our behalf for the children and the taxpayers that are paying into this. So thank you. Second of all, I do believe in the check and a balance. And I agree with Member Cunha in that I think we should look, as a board, we should look at expanding some of your area of abilities on the Bond Oversight Committee. I agree in transparency to its fullest. And, if we disallow communications between one group to the next group, we're really setting ourselves up for some type of imbalance and a failure in how those funds should and could be used to the benefit of the children of the district and to the benefit of the entire community. So, I don't know how we need to do this, whether we need to establish a policy committee that looks at different things like this so that we can make recommendations, bring them back to the board and implement these, whether it be brought back on an agenda item and then we discuss that at the next agendized meeting. But I'd like to see that happen sooner rather than later. So those are all my comments today, and thank you, Mr. Vasaya. You're a very key person, and I thank you as well for your hard work and all the others who are not before us. So I trust that the chair and the co-chair will take our comments back of extreme gratitude. Thank you.
Member Saito. And I'm going to interrupt you right now, board member. Before you start, I was going to do this later, but you put your light on, so I wanted to officially welcome you here, and that we are all looking forward to working with you. And the fact that you have pushed your light the first meeting is a very good sign.
Thank you. On page 8, for your recommendations, you mentioned how you want to have a high school student member. I am very glad to hear this, and you said that the best insight about this is from the students themselves, and that is completely true. And I think it's very important to have our input since the school district is about the students. And I would also like to contact you about this and bring it back to the Student Advisory Council if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Hanson.
I was just going to do a quick chime in on that as well and see if we could make that an action item to add. I assume the Bond Oversight Committee is going to be meeting for some time, or is this a final report? Are they done, or so you're going to continue your service as long as we have bond money, I assume. So I'd like to find out what's the process to add a school board member, a high school student as a board member of the committee. Maybe we can bring that back as an action item. And then we can allow our student member to vet that with, her.
I would
I
assume,
think it would
Mr.
be a
Gautier,
non-voting,
Mr. Gautier, I would
yeah.
assume we could do that, particularly seeing that it's a non-voting member, that there would be no problem with that, correct?
I'm not aware of any problem with that. We'd want to look at the board policy on the Bond Oversight Committee to see what it says about that. But one way or the other, you can get there.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'd like to see if we can follow up on that.
All right, thank you very much. I echo all the rest of the board as far as thanking you for your hard work. I served on the Bond Oversight Committee 10 years ago. I know that when it comes time to look at the audits and all of the information, it is a lot of work. I will throw a little bit of cold water on the discussion, though, and just more of a cautionary. I'm done. More of a cautionary. I agree that the Bond Oversight Committee should have more influence in the process. But we have to be careful. When I was on, and this is coming from personal experience, when I was on the Bond Oversight Committee, we had members who wanted to expand the role of the Bond Oversight Committee to the point where they were holding press conferences when they didn't agree with things that the board was doing with bond money. So we do want to keep in mind that the use of bond money is ultimately that decision made by the board, and that being said, I just wanted to throw that in there so that that's part of the thought process to when we go forward. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
10.4, approved 2014-2015 district budget update and revision, state budget approval. Mr. Castillo. This is an action item.
And just to preface this particular presentation, Gerardo and I have worked pretty closely the last couple days, so I'm going to be interjecting some information here as we go forward with different questions, because it was a pretty heavy lift when Mr. Forrest wasn't here, so I'm going to be adding a little bit more voice to this one, if need be.
Good evening, President Kennedy, Superintendent Noguchi, and members of the board. As you know, Mr. Forrest is not here today. Therefore, we will be discussing the 2014 district budget update and state budget revisions. The reason that we are here is because Education Code 42-127 requires to do so. The governor signed a budget on June 20, 2014, and we had 45 days to revise the budget. The 45 days is by August 4. What we'll be discussing tonight is the changes in the governor's budget versus the May revise. And those items are the increase in funding for local control funding formula, the CalSTRS employee contribution, mandated cost reimbursement, additional revenue, and we also will be discussing the effect of the New Joseph Bornheim Charter School that was not in the governor's budget, but affects the general fund. Therefore, we will be discussing that. We will also discussing some adding restorative justice expenditures, and we will briefly discuss the calculation of the local control funding. So the adopted budget, we were assuming that we were getting 28.05% in the gap funding for local control funding formula. The good news was the governor actually increased it to 29.56. What this means is we will have getting almost 1.7 million more. We will see how this number changes later on. Another impact in the general fund was that we were estimating that CalSTRS will increase by 1.25. That was the news that we got in the May revise. It came a little bit down to 0.63% increase. So therefore, instead of being the CalSTRS rate at 9.5, it was 8.8%. Therefore, it decreased the expenditures by $1,054,000. So this right here is, you will notice that at the first year, the rate was not as high as we thought versus the May revise when the governor signed the budget, but eventually the rate, it will be 19.10%, the same as the May revise. So yeah, just push down the cost. And also, CalPERS increase we will be 20.4% the employer contribution. What this means for the public is that for every dollar that we pay in salary, we automatically are paying 20 cents, for every dollar, 20 cents in retirement. That's how much we'll be paying. That's what is going to happen. That's just for current employees. Some of the great news, this is good news, is that the governor gave us a one-time mandated cost reimbursement of almost $2.6 million. These are for common core expenditures or one-time expenditures approved by the governing board. And now this is the impact of Joseph Boeheim Charter School. The net impact is $950,000. How do we get here? We have, we are assuming at this point that we have 264 students from the general fund that they will go to the charter fund. We will collecting from them charter oversized fees and contribution toward the special ed for $218,000 for a net decrease of revenue of $1.6 million. We also had decreasing in expenditures of $614,000 because we are assuming that 6 teachers they are in their general fund will go to the charter school. So the net effect is $950,000. Restorative justice. This was added here because at the last board meeting during the LCAP process and the comments from the board is that we need to do more for the restorative justice. Therefore, we are in $200,000 here. You might wonder what that has to do PBIS with restorative justice. Positive behavioral intervention and support system is a system for improving school climate, culture, and reducing disciplinary incidents and improving student academic performance. Restorative justice is used to build a sense of school community and resolve conflict by repairing harm and restoring positive relationships. Hence, the two-word hand-glove fit. The implementation of PBIS is enhanced by the integrating of restorative justice. They support each other. So the general fund, I'll combine in the revenue, the total increase is almost $2.7 million. And here is the breakdown of the items that we discussed. So we will have getting $1.7 million in LTFF. We lost students, therefore it's a decrease in the LTFF funding. We're getting mandated cost reimbursement, and we are getting some charter oversight fees. So the expenditure side, so that was, we discussed the revenue, now the expenditures. So we are reducing about 6 FTE due to the new Joseph Boeheim. We are saving $1,054,000 because CalSTRS was not as high as we thought for the first year. We add in $200,000 for restorative justice. We add in $2.6 million for the common core expenditures. So the total increase in expenditures is 1.1. So we have $2.7 million in increase in revenue. We have an increase of 1 point in expenditures. So we have an increase in general fund of $1.6 million. At this point in time, this $1.6 million, these funds have not been allocated for any specific purpose. That's why they are in the fund balance. We are recommending, we're still in the middle of negotiations, could be possible class size reductions. We don't know what. I mean, it will be at a cabinet discussion, the board approval. So for now, we have this $1.6 million. So now we will discuss briefly the calculation of the local control funding formula. You will notice here that we are using the gap rate of 29.56. That's the new calculation it is. And we also had to spend $12 million in unduplicated students. So you will notice in this slide the calculation of the LCT. We expecting LCF funds $316.5 million, and out of this, $31.4 million is regarding the supplemental and concentration funds. So we need to expand, we need to increase, LCFF requires that we need to increase our funding, our expenditures for free and reduced students, foster youth, and English learners by about $3.6 million in the year 2014-15. So staff also attend the School Service of California conference this last Tuesday, and these are some key points that we summarize. It's a 4 hours conference, but we summarize it in some slides here. One of the items is that we have been discussing about all the additional revenue that we're getting from the state, but the real story is on the expenditure side. What I mean is that we have increased costers and CalPERS will increase significantly. They will go up and up. I mean, it will more than double. So that's a significant cost for the district, and that's costers we were not counting on that increase just on May. So that's where we need to focus now. Let me give you an example. What I mean by that is that, in 13-14, about 3.83% of our expenditures were in costers. By the year 2020-21, they will be almost 9%. So another way to say it, we were spending $341 per ADA. Just 3 years down the road, we will spend $520. So this is a reminder, temporary property taxes are temporary. They will expire in 2016 and 2018. What does that mean? Is that the state will lose about over $7 billion in Proposition 30 revenue. What this means for us is about $444 per ADA for 2014-15. So the new implications is that what it is that even I'm a fan of LCFF. I mean, I like LCFF, but we need to realize that it's very uncertain, and we are at the hands of the state. The state decides pretty much how much the revenue we get. And the fiscal solvency starts with reserves. They were given an example that most of the mistakes in financial planning are made during good times, not during tough times. Everybody knows when we don't have money, but when we have money, it's how we spend it, what kind of decisions we made. Adequate reserves are an essential part of local control. And why do districts need adequate reserves? I mean, these economic downturns, we were just there 3 years back on planned expense. On May, we were not counting on cost increase. Now we are. Cash shortage. Okay, so we need to spend our funds in today's students, but not at the expense of tomorrow's students. So I mentioned before that there is great risk in the LCFF funding, so we just need to plan for that and be cautious how we use our money. And just a few days ago, the state adjusted the revenue from 30.39% to 20.68% to 2015-16. So let me touch a little bit on the K-3 class size reduction. By the year 2020-21, it is required in the LCFF that districts class sizes are 24-1, except if there is a collective bargain agreement. So the advice was very clear to all of us that if we are going to use savings from class sizes on permanent salary increases, the class size languages also has to be permanent. So I think this is my favorite slide of the presentation, is that collaboration is more important than ever. Now is the time to work and move forward together. And they emphasize how the LCAP is the key. That's how we need to work. Everything that we do is related to the LCAP, and the process is a year-round process. So what are the next steps? So we're asking you to approve our revised budget in order to meet a 45-day requirement that it will be by August 4. There might be additional budget adjustments where we move an expenditure from one line to another in the future, and we are still reviewing the budget. We're coming in December and January. We're presenting to you the first interim, the budget calendar, and the budget process never ends. Now we have to work on the LCAP and what is the budget coming for 15-16. So thank you for your time, and I'm open for any questions.
Ross.
We have 3 public comments on 10.4 from Mac Worthy, Darlene Anderson, and Carl Pinkston.
Mike Worthy. Budget, I've heard a lot about the budget. We hear a lot about state budget and this budget here at the school district. This school district budget should be based on your student population. Now, wherever else you get money from, that's your business. But the proposal here is your babies, because that's how you get paid. If your baby's not present, you don't get paid. Now, all this stuff about the teacher retirement, that's somebody else's problem. That's been years. That's what I tell you. This have had the problem here, and that's at state level. Everywhere we go, it's the retirement of Pearl. Then we see the paper say, here's a guy who got $220,000 kickback. A shoebox. I sent him to jail. But yet still we crying about the budget. Retirement. We got to wake up, people, to the real facts here. Where we see things here, a surplus property. We don't be dealing no budget. That should be property for sale. Get a real estate person in here and sell that property, because I don't see nobody sitting on this podium have the ability in sales and lease a property. Wake up, people. Give our babies some education. Bonds. Let's educate people on bonds. Let's go back to 1913 when bonds was created. Your birth certificate to commerce, $600,000 per person. That's how they come up with the bonds. Rockefeller's daddy. Teach these people about bonds. You are bonded and going to bond out here after a while. Property and bonds should be coincide, and teach the people the facts between property value and bonds. And you'll get something done here. But you're not trying to educate the people. You're still pimping the public. Tell them the truth, people. Many of you don't know what you're doing. Go get the proper advice. We got it here in this town. We got professional people in those areas that bring it to you and talk about it and put it at level. You ought to speculate. You cannot cover all that paperwork in time to make a proper decision.
Thank you, sir.
Wake up, people.
Darlene Anderson. I think it's pretty important to find out just how the Accelerated Academy was created, because we're talking about restorative justice. But I know, and I'm not arguing about, does the district have a right to do it? But I'm asking under what law is the Accelerated Academy operating under? These children these are regular ed kids. These kids are ADA, generating ADA, and they're regular ed kids, but they're being placed in a program where their money is not following them. Not one dime, not one Title I dollar, not one LCFF dollar. But then I'm told that these kids are graduating. Well, graduating, and I looked at the SAT scores across Sacramento, and unfortunately, Sacramento had the lowest SAT scores as a district in the city. And so when we're talking about lost revenue for property taxes, knowing how we create most schools, these children have been sacrificed. I asked the question, how do they even get in the Accelerated Academy? It's not through a SARB, obviously. We've only had 44 SARBs this year, 44, and we have almost 300-something kids that were African American in the Accelerated Academy. Every dollar they generate stays at their home school, and their home school continues to exist. but these kids get a basic education. Oh, basic? What is really basic? 8th grade? The board's responsibility is to ensure that all kids have a basic education, at least one that will allow them to have a job. I would like to know how the process, who determined the Accelerated Academy would happen? How is it that the money does not follow the student there? And I understand it was done under a juvenile piece that allowed you guys to create an alternative program, but these are regular ed kids. And so how they actually get in the program is really important because these kids should still be at their home schools.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carl Pinkston with the Black Parallel School Board. First of all, I wanted to say finally wanted to say thank you for including restorative justice as part of the budget. I think that's a major step for this particular district. I know it was a difficult decision to make, particularly in allocation, but in comparison to Fresno, which put 1.5 million, 2 million in LA, other districts are already making the investment towards restorative justice. I think this is a small step. It's a first step. We understand that. We're looking forward, particularly in terms of implementing the new school discipline policy, particularly developing administrative regs and all those pieces. Most importantly, I do want to recognize Dr. Sarah Noguchi and Jeff Cunha, who really come a long way and walk with us through this most difficult process, who really understood exactly what it would take to make this happen. We know we're just halfway there. We're not all the way there. We got a long road to go to reduce and to eliminate willful defiance that disproportionately impact African American and Latino students. But I think this is a very first step. Lastly, I just wanted to say for the future, in terms of participating in the budgeting process, we really would like to see that this district consider participatory budgeting process. Marty Brown, who was on the city council in Vallejo, will willing to offer to make a presentation before this board in terms of this process as to what exactly participatory budgeting process is all about. Thank you.
Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Kennedy. I don't have many questions today because I did have an opportunity to speak to Mr. Forrest. So all my questions that I had were answered. But I do have one based on the presentation. And by the way, Mr. Castillo, you did a wonderful job. And I know this wasn't your presentation, but I think you did a great job considering that you had to jump in on somebody else's. So,
it's a teamwork, yeah.
Yeah. So on page 12, go back.
That one? I don't, it's hard for me to see. No,
Right
that one?
there, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So at the very bottom, you must increase your spending on free and reduced foster youth language
Yeah.
by at least this much each year. How come it goes down every year?
That's a great question. I actually have a question, me too. That reason is because you will notice that we have less students in years 15, 16, so therefore the amount goes down. That's what I mean. But we already have, so increases, the percentage is not as much. It still increases, but not as high. So we went from, in 14-15, we need to increase by 3.5 million, and then 15-16, it's still increasing, but not as high rate as it was in the previous years. And that is just a calculation of the supplemental concentration times the rate. So we are assuming in 15-16 that we are getting funded at 20.67% for the gap. So if that rate goes up, that amount could go up too. So that's how our assumptions determine the number.
So the recent action that was taken by the legislature to move it from the 33%, down. That's what that's reflected in.
Yeah, and actually we sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. We were actually, even before, we used an average. So we were at 20.67 and they did as 20.68. So we were very, very close. We were just lucky. So some districts, we hear that they already committed money. Okay, so they have to make reductions in that year. So kind of like, that is, I mean, they want to emphasize how volatile those revenues is. And they also mentioned too that, I want to say here that, this could change, it's volatile. So that's what we know as of this point in time.
Yeah, and I keep saying over and over that Prop 30 funds are temporary in nature and that we shouldn't be building a long-term sustainable budget based on those funds. So, I hope the message resonates with others. So, and then just the rest of the rest of what I'm going to say is just basically comments. I think that there is a lot of really good information in these slides, especially the ones that have a lot of bullet points in them. And I would encourage, if the board members haven't read those points, some of them are extremely valuable, especially for some of the issues that we'll be facing in the very near future. But on slide 21, there's one in particular at the very bottom of that slide that I'd just like to point out, because that should be what everybody's focus is. And it's that we advocate for spending today's dollars on today's students, but not at the expense of tomorrow's students. So every dollar received today should be spent on the student today. And it goes back to something that I always say is students don't get a second chance to do first grade or second grade or third grade, so they need those resources at that time. The teachers need the resources in the classroom at that time to teach the students so that they're learning well. So I really appreciate that comment was put into the slide because it really does reflect on, some core beliefs that I have at least. And then the last comment that I have is I did read, and I'm going to mess this one up, but I read the information that came to me from the coalition of community groups that got together that are doing a budget watch on the LCAP. And, I'd like to offer to them that we do a conference call. I can provide some insight on some of the questions that I asked based on some of the information that I received. And I'd like to clarify a few things. But one of the most important things for just those who are here in the audience today, and maybe those who are watching on television or on their computers, or a recording of this, is that we shouldn't be focused on this year's revisions because the budget had already been approved back in June. But what we should be doing to make ourselves more effective as a community of people that are coming together is to really focus on next year's budget process and participating in that conversation in terms of the LCAP and where we need to see funds potentially expended at. I really appreciate and value deeply that we have community that's actually interested in the budget. It's not often that you get people here who are interested in it, and it's not very often that you get people who are emailing you about it. So I definitely appreciate and value that. But let's get together and do a conference call and try to get some of those questions answered for you. And that's it. Thank you, Gerardo, again for everything.
Member Cunha. I miss a joke.
Yeah, that's all right. So did I. Don't worry. I just wanted to take a moment and as it was pointed out, the restorative justice piece. It's a good start. I think not nearly enough, but I too want to just publicly say I was glad that was in there, and I hope to build on that expenditure in years to come. So, thank you.
Any other board member? Thank you, Mr. Castillo. Pinch hitting, you hit a home run. Good job.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Let's go for the one.
Is there a motion? It's been moved by Vice President Wu, seconded by, I believe, Member Rodriguez. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we do have 11.0. We have business and financial information reports. I believe we do have a public comment on this, at least.
Yes, we have two comments on this item from Mac Worthy and Darlene Anderson.
On this? Oh, okay.
Mainly, we see some business language, cash flow. That's the language we want to speak. And then we see some things put together on this. It says contracts. Then we skip down to enrollment. What do you really want to put together? Enrollment is the babies when you get paid. So what you want to do with this type of thing, this is not what you should bring to the public. You should have more details on. This ain't giving us no information. There's nothing here for really we to ask questions to, other than how many babies were there and what they got paid per day, the school district got paid per day. And what was that cash flow during that period of time? That's all. Those things is automatically in accounting. Those things don't have to be tracked down. That's automatic. You know that if that baby ain't present, you ain't got paid. So these are things that you should get to a point with and get down and quit. Some of you should grinning on the stage. We ain't business here. Go somewhere else and have fun, because too many babies have been misused here by people not being serious on what they come here for, to make these decisions. And you are swamped in enough paperwork here to read 2 weeks, and you never will read it all because you have to ask somebody some questions. What you're dealing with, the book pertaining to something like the Bible. Watch the person say they read the Bible from page to page. That's a fool. You can't even digest that. The same thing here with the information that goes through this administration here. You cannot digest that information. You cannot read that information and digest it. The staff don't have time to go back and point you to what information you don't understand. This is why I say, how you come in here as peons and all of a sudden you'll be experts. We got to eliminate that. The district got to eliminate the board members.
Darlene Anderson. I know from a long time ago, for every 100 children deemed at risk of failure, the district generated $1 million. That's how come the Success Academy kept its numbers under 50. And so when I look at the number of kids who are enrolled in the alternative educational program that this district is running that doesn't have a school source code, and then I look at the cumulative statistics, I notice that Accelerated Academy is not included there. Success Academy, Capital City is independent study, American Legion, and whatever other program the district has. That's what the state of California gave the district. The state of California gave the district wide latitude and flexibility in programs that the state has deemed successful with children who are at risk of dropping out. But the district created a program all on its own where no oversight happens. And that is my question. How did the district create a program where it doesn't have to follow any of the state rules, no rules of the federal government, and these kids are claimed to get a great education because they're in the district, but they're not in their home school. If you have a high school that has comprehensive wraparound services for Title I children, yet they can't be educated there. Why? What's wrong with those children that they're so dysfunctional that they can't get an education in their home schools? Obviously, something is wrong with these children. There is an identifier, a marker on these children that will not allow them to be taught in their home schools, and that is what I want to know. I get frustrated sometimes because I've talked about the Accelerated Academy for a long time. And every time I come, the district feels like they don't have to answer the question how those kids actually wind up in the program. They're not going through a SARB. They're not being placed there through a SARB. It is a parent choice. But why are the parents choosing the Accelerated Academy when there are programs that are monitored by the state and monitored by the federal government? Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Member Hanson has a comment.
Yes, sorry for jumping in at the end. I should have said this earlier, but I did have one correction to one of our speakers talked about our low SAT scores. That's actually not correct. So I'd recommend just taking a look at the facts. And in fact, McClatchy High School finished 100 points above the state average. So I just want to make sure for all the folks who are watching that they know that we actually have done quite well in this district. So there's a lot to celebrate, as usual. And secondly, Mr. Gladney, when you spoke earlier about the AMS contract, that was something that interested me, and maybe we can take a look at, some ideas of local source contracting. Maybe there might be some opportunities for us to do something special to look at, the opportunity to, if it's partnering with our own schools and the students that are there, or partnering with businesses that are in our area, instead of having the contracts that are paid for by our taxpayers in this area go out of city, out of state, that we might look at some opportunities to try to build in some ways that we can incentivize trying to do those contracts locally, so we're really getting the bigger bang for the buck. So I thought that was a very good point that you brought up, and I know that's something that's done in the construction world, and maybe we can take a look at that for this as well. So I apologize for the late comments, but thank you.
Thank you. 13.0 future meetings. We do have a meeting on August 7th at 4:30 closed session, 6:30 open session. Please, board members, let me know if you're not going to be at that meeting. We have one board member who will be out of town, so we want to make sure that we have a quorum. And then the next meeting is August 21st. We are at 14.0 for adjournment. Is there a motion? Is there a motion? We have a motion by Member Saito to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second? Seconded by Vice President Pritchett. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? We're adjourned.